Welcome, guys. Welcome. We are about a minute and 13 seconds early. How's everybody doing tonight? It's a beautiful, amazing night. Oh, shit. Getting some feedback. There we go. Punkabilly. Good. Blah, blah, blah. Cool. Well, guys, welcome. We'll try this again. No feedback this time. We're still working on it. So, guys, we're going to be, we've made some purchases to improve the stream. There's some lights coming, so that's a positive. Let's see. After this weekend, I will be bringing some other things on board. A professional background, better ticker, better transitions. Unfortunately, a Stream Deck was out of the budget, so that's a thing. Let's see. So we're working on it. We're going to be improving, seeing what we can do to improve. You know, got to always be improving. You know. 1 second, I got to fix the green screen. Apologize. All right, there we go. You know, always be improving. Always. And then let's improve the YouTube chats because it's too long. There we go. Right. Scroll that on down. Bring it down just a little bit. All right, guys. So there we go. It has been folk punk, but super bluegrassy. What? Can you guys hear the music downstairs in the bar? I've tried locking the focus. Unfortunately, it does not want to not let me. I mean, I'll try it again, but it's been a problem I've been having. So configure video. And then all right, let's bring up camera controls. Right, we'll go to advanced. And autofocus is off, so I don't know why it does that. It's not supposed to do that. Auto white balance is off, autofocus is off. I don't know why it does it anyways. Like I literally have it turned off on the C920 Pro. Like I thought that was the whole point of buying the Pro, but also I'm working on buying a new camera, so we'll go from there. But it's off as far as I can see, guys. You know? And now that I brought that up, it jacked everything up. Go over here to exposure. There we go. Back to regular looking me. So yeah, I don't know why it does it. I haven't been able to stop it from doing it. So don't know why it does it. Yeah, by the way, guys, if you haven't liked and subscribed, every little bit helps. So yeah, I do what I can. Hopefully you guys could see the camera controls. I thought I brought them up, but just in case I didn't. All right, so tonight we have some craziness going on inside of Ukraine. We're going to talk about that and, of course, go through the latest Russian campaign assessment from the ISW. And After that, we're going to be talking about what's going on in the background of Ukraine and some of the issues behind it. By the way, guys, quit smoking. So there we go. We're doing that too. And I don't know. It's been a crazy week. We got a lot to cover. We'll be going over the issues from the SCOTUS leak. That's another thing we'll be doing tonight, along with okay, y'all, come on, don't junk up the podcast subjects. Don't make me lock the thread. We'll be going over the Elon Musk Twitter stuff, and we're also going to cover NATO stepping up its flights of F-35s. You know, showing Russia why Americans don't have free healthcare. And some other things around free speech and free speech issues. Dave Chappelle was assaulted by a man who had what apparently ended up being a fake firearm, but was assaulted and almost tackled on stage at one of his shows. And we're going to talk about the chilling effects on free speech that has, and some things, and get into that. And also talk about Roe v. Wade and what Roe v. Wade actually is, and the stances that have been taken over time around that, and that'll be in our U.S. politics. But first, we're going to start off, of course, with the world news, as we always do. So, for anybody who doesn't know, we've been providing Ukraine a large amount of weapons, and that has had a great effect for Ukraine, and especially around Kharkiv. They are now within artillery range of Izium, and that's where Russia has put a lot of its command and control. And really, Russia's facing an issue where they are either going to have to withdraw, pull back, or B, retake Kharkiv, reinforce that push. And if they don't do that, then they're pretty much guaranteed to lose most of their positions to the new artillery. Germany has provided new artillery radars that are exceptionally good at identifying targets within 45 to 50 kilometers, providing exact ranges, and work very well with the howitzers the U.S. has provided, along with the German artillery that's been provided and the French systems. Basically, you can go within about 5 to 7 minutes. You can literally launch it 5 to 7 minutes later, have your targets provided to you, and be locked in and launched on them if your artillery teams are appropriately trained, and we're making sure they are. So, so as this says, the Ukrainian counteroffensive out of Kharkiv city may disrupt Russian forces northeast of Kharkiv and will likely force Russian forces to decide whether to reinforce their positions near Kharkiv. Russia has continued to have ineffective BTGs. The way that they've reconstituted their BTGs has been absolutely ineffective, with soldiers that are really, really badly affected morale-wise from these other units that have just been absolutely destroyed, especially the units that were part of the assault on the north when they were trying to take Kyiv. When they've reconstituted and reused these soldiers, it's not a unit they've been with. It's not teams they've been with. There's no cohesion. They haven't had time to really practice or get to know each other, or practice together, or work together. And when you also have the morale effects of us constantly hitting their generals, hitting top level officers, these guys are really scared for their life. They're not in the fight because they want to be in the fight. They're in the fight because they're forced to be. And so those guys, they're not trying their best, number one. And number two, they're looking for the first escape out. And when they know that they are getting sent on a difficult mission, or a mission that has a high probability of direct conflict that could cost them their life, they need to be motivated to fight for you. They need to believe in the cause, and that just isn't there for them right now. So they really haven't gotten very far in the last 24 to 48 hours. They've actually lost quite a bit of ground in the far northeast around Kharkiv, and they continue to lose areas around there. There was an issue. Unfortunately, someone has shown them the underground tunnels and shown them how to access the underground tunnels around the metallurgic plant down in Azovstal. And they tried to mount an assault through those underground tunnels. Now, they were repelled initially, and since then, all contact with the Azov contingency that was still there has been lost, from what I understand. Um, and the Ukrainians are definitely losing ground there. Those forces are most likely to be, unfortunately, rendered ineffective or exterminated in the next 48 to 72 hours. Um, Beyond that, the operations around Kharkiv are intended to push Russian forces out because Russian forces have stalled so much. Ukraine has really started on the offensive instead of being on the defensive, and that's not what they want because they were wanting to close. Um, they were wanting to close basically the boiling pot uh, area, the cauldron as they call it, around the Donetsk Luhansk region, and they can't do that if they're having to focus on their outer edges, right, and defending the horseshoe they already have. They can't close the cauldron and close off those forces like they wanted to. Um, Russian forces, of course, they're trying to move towards Zaporizhia, but they don't really get to, they really don't have the ability to do any attacks in Kherson and Mykolaiv. So now they really have started transitioning to trying to attack the Ukrainian supply system. They've taken out several bridges, several railways, and they've moved more to bombing Ukraine and trying to weaken and soften their logistics so that way they are less effective in reinforcing the troops that they have in these active conflicts. And that does two things, right? One, it makes it to where Ukraine is having to basically constantly repair these logistical infrastructure pieces or find ways to not use them and go around those uh, basically create new lines of supply that don't include those railways and using those depots of fuel. And that disrupts things, of course, right? And then on the other hand, it also is meant to weaken the resolve or try to weaken the resolve of the Ukrainians, which I think is again ill placed. And I've voiced this before. It's very ill placed. Ukrainians are very stubborn. Okay. And when you start hurting them and they start feeling it, they don't get degraded. They get angry. Okay. And an angry force is a motivated force. Okay. When you have anger that is directed not internally, and it's not fear that's directed internally, but anger that's directed externally at your forces, you are improving morale. Okay. There's nothing more cohesive than giving someone a clear and objective enemy that they are absolutely angry at that is making their life harder. It's just exceptionally bad for them. Just exceptionally bad for them. All right, moving forward. I have to work on my layout a little bit. Work on my layout a little bit. If you guys want to interact, make sure that you guys hop in Discord and use VC chat. I also try to watch the chat for YouTube. So yeah, fake firearm, real blade. Yeah, the guy who attacked Dave Chappelle did have a real knife. Um, Not good, damn right. The camera itself has a setting. That was the settings inside of the Logitech cameras. I don't know how to get that autofocus to stop. It should not be doing the focusing thing right now, though. I did my best to improve it. Yes, I can see that, Tarkin. Absolutely. Thank you for checking to make sure VC chat was working. Um, yeah, so that's the thing, guys. Don't, if you want to defeat a force and you want to make the Ukrainian people um willing to take you as a subjugation force, the last thing you want to do is be starving them and taking out their fuel so they can't get around and perform daily life tasks. And there's better ways that they could be doing this, but unfortunately, Russia has shown an inability to effectively get dynamic intelligence so they can attack mobile convoys. The Russian military has some really confusing things going on inside of it still. Their inability to effectively gather intelligence and execute against that intelligence quickly and effectively has been exceptional, has been just absolutely poor and just dumbfounding in how they've been unable to execute those maneuvers. Absolutely. So yeah, beyond that, we'll keep moving on. But here is the assess control. You'll see that what I'm talking about. So this inner part here is the horseshoe. right? And that's really where they wanted to close. They were trying to extend their fingers out. You see that there's a really large battle circle here for active conflict, and one right here around Luhansk. Kharkiv, you see that there's been more gains with blue. They're really pushing in to try to cut this area off. And there's a major supply line right here that runs straight through this area here. If they can get here and cut off that supply line and take it out, or be able to confiscate those supplies, the forces in Izium are going to get starved out, and then their only resupply is literally coming through down here through Crimea and up through Kherson. The supply line down here around Donetsk has been destroyed. The railways, there's no really good supporting roads in these areas. Um, and some other things. Plus, we had a huge thing today where basically the U.S. just said fuck it and came out and said that they've been giving Ukraine live intelligence and providing them with intel of battlefield assets and the movement of battlefield assets. And that goes back towards what I said. I think that the intelligence that Ukraine has been getting has been exceptional and beyond what I would assume they had the capability to do. And it's been quite amazing how they've been able to proactively target um, individuals in the Russian military and what they've known about Russian military movements and other things such as that. And it turns out that that's because the U.S. has been providing them active intelligence, not just through transfers of intelligence, but live intelligence feeds. Okay, and that in and of itself is been critical to their efforts, um, and has been exceptionally helpful. But the idea that this hasn't leaked and that those intelligence feeds haven't leaked and that we've been able to keep those intelligence feeds up and going, show the resolve of the Ukrainian people and how and also a lot of discipline and effective countermeasures and counterintelligence measures in the Ukrainian military that this hasn't become public until we admitted it today. And I'm not sure why we did, but cool. Um, so down here in Kherson, you see that they keep pushing in around Kherson. There was effectively there was a huge push to retake Kherson down in the south. That push has sort of stalled in the way that um, unfortunately some of those forces have struggled to be resupplied. They've kept the resupply good enough to stay where they are, but not good enough to keep the forward momentum around Kherson. So what you'll start to see is around Sephoria, they're going to try to connect this front together and push inward, right? And we'll see how that works. And again, inside of the blue striped areas, indirect fire on the command and control centers is continued onward. They've also opened up a new battlefront right here in this circle. This wasn't here before, and they're attacking to try to keep them from creating that cauldron. Right? They were trying to connect these pieces. You'll see that the red that was all the way down here and all the way up here is gone. So, um, let's see. Russia has been accusing the U.S. of providing them intelligence. It was quite clear that what they were doing from an intelligence standpoint was far beyond what Ukraine was capable of, right? So it was just no one really knew who was providing them the intelligence. But we've been able to watch the flights and see, the hawks in the sky and the intelligence gathering planes in the sky. They haven't done a lot to hide. Um, they haven't done a lot to. Yeah, that actually is a weird thing. Winston Churchill during World War II did actually consult with a witch. It's quite interesting. Northern Lights with Tarkin with the facts, the mad facts. Also, I'd like to welcome in my buddy here, Styles. He's here to join us, the Canadian with the man with the plan. So welcome him, guys. You there? There you go. What's going on, man? Welcome. Appreciate you being here. Yeah, I appreciate it. Absolutely. Guys, there were missile strikes against Mykolaiv and Odessa. Uh, the one thing that Ukraine is going to struggle with is they don't have a lot of ways to counter the Russian Navy. The Russian Navy pretty much sits down in the Black Sea unopposed. Uh, Ukraine lost most of its navy back when the Crimea confiscation happened. Um, and so they have missile ships sitting out there, and they were putting those to good use today. And they've been resupplying those through helicopter resupplies through their heavy helicopter lifts. Um, Ukraine's going to have to do something about that, or else their southern ports are just going to be constantly under attack, and they're going to have a hard time getting themselves back to normal if they can't use the Black Sea. Uh, let's see what else. What else we got going on here? Oh man, that's insane. Let's go back to that. So appreciate it. Just 1 second. We'll yeah. Report. Oh, I so there is some confusion around this. So guys, what he just sent me was that there was a report that the Russian Navy that a Russian Navy frigate had been hit by a Neptune missile. Um, it's hard to say at this point what has caused the explosion and exactly what vessel it is. There's some strong assumptions that are going on, and as soon as we confirm that, we'll talk about that. They have shown some ability to hit certain targets, but they have. There was an unfortunate incident where they hit an arms depot that contained the anti-ship weapons that it had been sent to them. I'm not going to get deep into that because that hasn't been publicly disclosed. It's an intelligence source that I'm not sure was at liberty to talk about it, and so we're just not going to get into the details of that. And with the Russian frigate, I had heard about this. I haven't heard anything specific from any of my other intelligence bros. Um, and right now, they're not going to talk about that because by disclosing what could or could not have happened, it will give away the Ukrainian posture as far as their capabilities and the Ukrainian capability postures. And that would be negative because right now they're so minimal that if some of them get taken out, it wipes out their effective ability to use those items. Um, so again, that was less than an hour ago, and I've been preparing. That's a little over an hour ago, and I've been preparing for this since 8 o'clock. So until I see that it has been openly discussed, not from a private intelligence source, um, I'm going to avoid that subject. So I think that it is absolutely true, right? I have no reason to doubt it, but I have to be careful because of my job and other things that I do where I'm trying to get back into doing now that I've cleared some hurdles there. That I'm careful with what intelligence I talk about. Um, so yeah, uh, the U.S. did declare that it shared intelligence about the location, but we don't know what weapon was used. We don't know what caused the explosion. There's quite a bit of, but I believe that they most likely hit the frigate. Um, the Russian military has control of the Black Sea. That's not under any doubt. One or two, so hitting the capital ship was a big blow to morale. Okay, that's a huge deal. Hitting this frigate, it's a frigate. It's meant to do it. So if you guys, there's a great YouTube video on the different classes of ships and what they're meant to do. Right, frigates are not really super important. They're just like corvettes. They're really fast attack ships that are meant to take on other small class ships and take out anti-sub or other anti-ship assets, right? So this isn't it doesn't make a big difference, you know what I'm saying? Styles, like it's just one out of like what 35, 50 ships. What they really need to take out miss are the missile system and missile capable ships that are around, such as the destroyers and the uh missile system equipped corvettes. um so and they're just not able to do that. Go ahead. Yeah. You and Cake. Yeah. You guys were yeah, so right now I'm 42 of 44 still, right? I'm 42 of 44. I had two wrong. One, I thought that as they got pushed out of the north, they were going to probably possibly use a tactical nuclear weapon. I felt that that was possible, and because Russia follows a escalate to de-escalate military doctrine, right? And it lends itself that, and also Putin doesn't like defeat. He likes to be able to churn things that are defeats into somehow miraculously not being a defeat. And so I had, for those reasons, I really felt um, that they that they would do that. That was one of the ones I was wrong on. And then I also was uh, wrong about the fires that had started in Moscow. I truly believe that they were Ukrainian. They were basically Ukrainian. It was a Ukrainian uh, counterinsurgency group. I mean insurgency group that was causing those problems to affect um, the morale and basically the psyche of the Russian people, right? And it turns out it was just a guy who had like basically a case of Molotov cocktails and was like chunking them in cars, right? So I was wrong on that one, but that was a minor one, but I was still wrong. Um, so and guys, people talk about, oh well, Ukraine really can't be focused. All it takes is a squad or two, 10 people to really do insurgency types of missions, and the psychological effect and making it to where the Russian people are realizing that this big hulking steel Goliath that's untouchable, that the Russian media is trying to make Russia out to be, is not the truth, right? And it's easy to hide information when it's not inside of your own country. It's not happening in your capital. All right. It's another thing when they can look outside and see a shitload of burning cars and a giant fireball in the center of Moscow. Like you can't cover that up with me. You can't cover that up in the media. People talk, right? When it's in another country and you're taking mad losses, you can cover that really easy just by not allowing it to be shown on the TV. So I was wrong on those two things, but yeah, I still have a pretty good streak. For those who didn't know, I am involved in intelligence communities, and I know a lot of guys from that and from my days in the military. But I try not to lean too heavily on those because you don't want to end up being the source for something. Um, but yeah, so guys, there were times where I was literally predicting 3 or 4 days out what would happen, and then 3 or 4 days out that would happen, and over the next course of a few days that would happen. And that's not to toot my own horn, but yeah, so we were keeping track of that. But I'm still on a pretty good streak. I think 42 out of 44 is pretty damn good. So it's better than I expected. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. Well, no, absolutely. So myself, to get this channel up and started and to get the podcast going and everything like that, it has taken a lot of my time away from being able to track this. And I also have a day-to-day job, guys. So we could fix that. We get enough subscribers, we get monetized. We can definitely fix that. But I don't want to be just focused on Ukraine. I want to talk about things that affect the social fabric of the world around us. And the first night that we did this, we had guys from Germany, the U.S., Norway, Poland, the UK who were in here, and I really like those having those opinions from Europe, because you guys got to understand where state basically Europe is very very close. Like the guys who are sitting over in Austria, some of the guys I talked to that are in Austria, we have two of them in here, um, and excuse me. Um, Ukraine is literally like a few hours drive for them, like 2 3 hours, and they're in Ukraine, right? Um, for guys like uh, Berlin, he drives a few hours, he's in Ukraine. Um, it's just yeah. Hmm. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You got to think if Russia's right there just a few hours attacking someone a few hours away, like imagine the vulnerability that that makes you feel. Like imagine if like Texas just started knocking the shit out of New Mexico, right? And you're in California. like like that's basically the equivalent of what's going on here. Um and so their perspectives are really, I really value their perspectives overall. Can you see what about the US intel? I already talked about that. um so yeah, it's just it's craziness, dude. um okay, let's catch up on the what's up oh no, that's not good. Northern Lights interesting. Yeah. All right, so nothing interesting in chat right now. All right, so moving on. um we know about Mariupol. Mariupol is almost fully Russian controlled at this point. And it's sad. These guys they've held on a lot longer than I thought they would. I always said it's hard to determine when you have a really fortified group in an area that they know to take it. It requires the committing a level of ground forces that's just beyond uh, what I think the BTGs can support. Huh, go ahead. Yeah. Hmm. But they're not allowing out anyone who's of fighting age. So, um, and the Russians are allowing that, but that was sort of, there's some backdoor things going on at the UN. That's why all of a sudden you saw UN trucks show up, and the UN is basically putting some bite to its words behind closed doors. It's, um, at the same time, there was a video of basically the world shaking um, while they were singing Ukrainian songs in the underground bunkers, and like you saw a female holding a a big, you know, uh, marksmanship rifle BTR, and they're not allowing those people out. Period. And they've already said they're not going to respect the Geneva Convention rules of war around soldiers, and they've shown that. So, a way for me to mute YouTube? Yeah, just mute the tab or just hit the mute button. Uh huh. Not, yeah. Um, yeah, absolutely. If you mute the tab, because if you mute the player, like on phone, you can mute the player and it's fine. It still counts as a view. Make sure you actually, if you mute the player and you turn on closed captions if it's available, but I got to work on it. I got some things to get going through, guys, but yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you. It's got to be in the internet. Got it. Well, so no, it's crazy, man. Uh, Russia basically also announced that they were going to start using the ruble inside of these areas that they've captured, and that goes against another thing that they've been saying, that they're not looking to permanently occupy these areas. Um, but at the same time, Ukraine is making sure that they have Ukrainian money running around too. So we'll see what happens there. I don't know what Russia's game is not really clear anymore, right? Like, what are they're going for the east? They were talking about taking the east and opening up from down in Moldova. The Moldova area seems to have fizzled out. So, um, they didn't cheat. They failed on every front, and that's why I think that Russia's getting backed into a corner, right? I really, the more Russia loses, right? Because it's hard, if so, it's hard to polish a turd, as the saying goes in the military. Like, the more they lose, and if you think about, okay, they wanted to take over Donetsk and Luhansk, they haven't done that. They wanted to take Kiev, they didn't do that. They lost the entire northern front, right? They had to withdraw entirely and go and reconstitute the east because they just so poorly failed. The southern front is taking massive losses. They've been unable to reconstitute it. They've been unable to resupply it. And so I'm looking for anywhere where they've won. Okay, they've been able to launch missile strikes and hit certain, you know, oil tanks and depots and take out, um, some railway and some other things like that. But other than destroying some infrastructure, you have diplomats who are returning to Kiev, right, from major countries, which means that you can't start if you want to not get blown out of the water. You can no longer attack Kiev, or you need to use precision guide munitions. And at this point, they've used around 78% of their precision guided munitions, and they're struggling to create more because of the embargoes. Like, they need chips from places like the UK, Taiwan, and the US, and we're definitely not giving them those. And go ahead, sorry. Yeah, they're officially on the counterattack. So what's happening is this not even a counter? They've gone on the offensive. And they're doing the same things that they've been doing. They're basically trying to starve out the Russian soldiers, right? Everything that they're doing is meant to encircle forces that are important, crush them, right? And then move their way to get to the routes. But with the artillery we've given them exceptionally modern artillery. Our howitzers, the 777 howitzers, are great when you combine them. Hold on, I need to grab the name of that that German provide artillery radar to Ukraine. Um so yeah, the Cobra artillery locating radars. Yep. So here, I got it right here. And this is off of Defense Blog. So um that combined with the 777s and the Panzerhaubite 2000s, right? Or the PH 2000s. Uh Basically, these systems are exceptionally high performance counter artillery detection, right? So if you have a battery of anything within 40 to 60 kilometers, up to 100 kilometers, it can classify up to 40 of them in 2 minutes. Okay, it can literally scan 120 seconds. You have your targets. It tells you basically you plug in where your artillery pieces are, right, on their coordinates wise. It then does a scan, right, and because it knows which way your artillery pieces are facing and where they are, it can literally tell you the exact adjustments you need to do to lay down that fire. So a good artillery team can literally 2 minutes have it, minute and a half have it relayed, another minute have it dial the items in, and then another minute start launching shells, right? So basically 5 to 6 minutes worth of time, and you can literally get it and start laying down fire. So, and to move the pieces that we're talking about, like missile systems, artillery batteries, it takes a minute to get those systems packed up so you can move them. So even if you know that you've been detected, you, you're moving against the 6 minute timer, really. It's 6 minutes. It'll fuck you up. Um. So yeah, it says right here is to locate mortars, rocket launchers, and artillery batteries, and provide information for countering their effectiveness. Um. Excuse me. So the other thing is that this system also allows them to provide evidence if Russian forces decide decide that they want to say that they're not shelling civilian areas, because these can detect who fired and what it was toward, right? There's another system the US has that does this, and I'm not unsure if it's unclassified yet, so I'm not going to talk about it. Um but this shit's it's great, dude. I mean, it's Germany is stepping up to the plate finally, but that's because the Bundestag decided to say um we're going to override the president, so, or the prime minister. So yeah. Um so that's all good things in there, and that's going well for them. And as I said, artillery, tanks, and missile launchers really lend themselves very well to the eastern part of Ukraine because it's very flat in comparison to the rest of the Ukraine itself is mostly flat, but there are hilly areas, especially towards the north and northwest. Um, Out in the east, that's really flat farmland, and so artillery and tanks and missile launchers are exceptionally effective in those areas. All right. So, Kharkiv City. Um, let's talk about that. So, Ukraine Commander in Chief Zelensky. uh, Zalana, Zalan, Zalanaya, sorry, stated on May 5th that Ukrainian forces are transitioning to counteroffensive operation. We already talked about this around Kharkiv and Izium. Um, the first direct Ukrainian military statement that they are actually shifting to offensive operations. Um, they intend to push Russian forces out of artillery range of Kharkiv, and force Russian units to redeploy from the Izium axis and potentially threaten Russian lines of communication. So all those things we just talked about. I haven't read this beforehand, guys. I'm sorry, I'm running a little bit behind tonight. But basically, all the things we just talked about they're now in artillery range of Izium, and they're forcing those forces back, and they're going to have to reconstitute those lines of supply and communication, all that right here. So um, let's see. Russian forces also reconnoitered Ukrainian positions and continued to shell Ukrainian positions in the northeast outskirts of Kharkiv. Pro Russian sources claim that Ukrainian forces blew up a bridge near the occupied settlement of Teshki, approximately 25 kilometers northeast of Kharkiv city, which could indicate an ongoing Ukrainian counterattack in the area, targeting the bridge to interdict Russian movements. All right, so why would they want to blow up a bridge? Right, and there's some reasons around this. So basically they had forces down here they were attacking, and another force in here, up here, towards the, basically towards the northeast, that could come and basically attack their flank, right? And they, but there was only one way for them to really get there effectively, and so they took that out. That bridge was a casualty of war. So that's why they would blow up their own bridge. But because of where they are now, right here around Kharkiv City and where they've taken here, Izium is well within reach of their artillery. Their artillery capabilities are now better than the Russians. Their artillery radars are now better than the Russians. Their artillery crews are now better trained than the Russians. Their morale is better than the Russians. Things are not looking good. So instead of Russia being able to focus on closing off the cauldron, they're going to have to choose: do they want to lose the Kharkiv area entirely and lose this right here? This, when I was talking earlier, I was talking about that important supply road that now you can see it in black and red, right? These are their communication lines and their resupply lines. There's a huge resupply line right here, going this way, and here's secondary, and there's a railroad that kind of runs like through the middle of here. And so they're going to have to decide whether they want to keep trying to push in and close the cauldron, or reinforce and stop the Kharkiv forward momentum. The problem is, I don't think they can do it either way. I think even if they take those the BTGs they have and refocus, if they do that, the forces here around Izium are just going to run straight in. So they either need to find combat effective forces to add additional combat power, which they don't have. They don't have that right now. They're talking about possibly doing declaring war on the 9th and reconstituting a draft and pulling in conscripted forces that are previously been conscripted, but those, they haven't been gone through military training in a long time. They've been out of the military, and just taking them, suiting them up, and throwing them in the mix isn't going to really change your combat effectiveness or your combat power, right? Because again, it goes into unit cohesion, and unit cohesion also applies to battalion cohesion, and battalions have to be able to be effectively cohesive and maneuver in order to have any effective cohesion, and create force momentum, right? Because cohesion allows the gears to work together, create momentum, and with that momentum you can do forward pushes. When those gears aren't working together and they're grinding against each other and not maneuvering well, you don't have cohesion. With the lack of cohesion, you have a lack of appropriate movement, a coordinated movement. With no coordinated movement, you get into disarray, and you basically just throw forces into the wind, and they get minced into mincemeat. The Ukrainians, because they've been trained so well, because they're fighting for a cause that they believe in, that's been reinforced, and because the amount of technologically advanced weaponry we've given them, right? They have the utmost advantage here, and I don't think Russia has to do something. I'm not sure what they can do, because they've been ineffective at coordinating their ground offensive with their air power, and that is the only way out of this. And I don't think they can do it. I just don't think they can. I think it's too late. Uh, Okay, so yeah, hey, so people talked about our surface to air missiles, right? The Stinger missiles. So people were talking about, oh well, our we've depleted, most of our Stinger. One, the Stinger missile is not commonly used anymore in the U.S. military. The last time we ordered Stinger missiles was 18 years ago. All right, so I want to be clear on that. The last time we ordered Stinger missiles from Raytheon was 18 years ago, and there's some pieces that have to be reconstituted. But the U.S. military war machine, you throw enough money at them, they can produce anything you want. Our javelin supplies have been affected, but we have multiple lines that have been down for what. So okay, factories work like this, right? So basically, you have factories and you have to tool them, right? And maintaining tooling and machinery takes money. So once you spin them up, you get them to capacity, you run them to fulfill a run, and then you get into sustainment. Okay, and sustainment doesn't require the same amount of tooled lines, right? You go from maybe four to one, right? Because it's just reconstitution. 1 second, Isabel, Isa. Russia hasn't gained anything; they're getting crushed. We can. I'll go back over that in a minute. But basically, you go from four lines to one, right? So we still have that capacity. What'll happen is that they'll break down those lines, they'll take the pieces, they'll move them into storage, right? And they'll maintain a line of reconstitution. We can easily spool back up those four lines with enough money, time, and effort. Um, so yes, we do, especially with our javelin missiles, we have depleted quite a bit of our reserves. But the U.S. is never going to um, deplete itself to where it has a problem with its own self-defense or combat effectiveness. Right? These are extras. These are just all sitting in warehouses waiting. Um, I don't want to get into too much about how the U.S. Army is structured. Okay, so I did supply and logistics in the United States military. Okay, and we have this thing called the modified table of organizational equipment. And I promise you that the U.S. forces have to keep on hand everything they need to be mobilization ready, and everything else is sitting in warehouses. Okay, now those are to resupply the things we may expend, right? But we will always make sure that our modified table of organizational equipment is fulfilled. Now, on these, that's where you get the term GI, government issue, from, right? The United States military considers personnel equipment. All right. So we manage everything from requisitioning people to fulfill roles, or someone who's about to go and is going to another assignment, all the way to we don't have enough missiles. We don't have enough gauze. We don't have enough scissors. We don't have enough bullets. And supply guys also are responsible for what's called level one uh, repair and maintenance of firearms. So, like me as an armorer, I was qualified on every weapon in the United States military arsenal for personal and crew serve use, right? So, crew serve is like 50 cal machine guns that go on top of like um, turrets, to all the way down to your 9 millimeter Beretta. Um, and I could repair them, trigger assemblies, springs, pins, gas rings, bolt springs, all that stuff. So, um, okay, sorry, I'm reading a incoming. So, yeah, it's so I want people to understand. Yes, we're depleting our back reserves, but we are not depleting our forces, our required force readiness supplies. Okay, those are different. All right, and we're never going to deplete ourselves to where we endanger our ability to resupply our own forces. But yeah, we're taking strong hits, but it's just going to spin up. Raytheon's going to start building more, because we were supposed to be redoing our anti-aircraft shoulder fired systems anyways. And honestly, missiles have a shelf life, and being able to use some of them is helpful. This is also the first time that the Javelin has been really field tested against actual, like, real armor in a combat situation, right? It's one thing to test them in a test situation or a test scenario, but to actually get out and watch and see how effective um, our anti tank systems and surface to air missile systems and other things are really lets us know how effective we can be in a fight against an adversary such as Russia. Um, so yeah, hopefully that answered your question. Try to go into depth as much as I could. Hmm. Well, it's because people hear something from a non-military source or a source that it knows about military efforts or issues but doesn't understand how the US military works, right? So some aide in some congressional office it was made aware of something or overheard a conversation or saw some memo. It was like, "Oh, we're depleting our stocks." Yep, we're depleting our reserve stocks. Okay? But they don't understand that, right? They don't understand how the military works. I'm blessed that I'm heavily involved in logistics, and that's why when we had those conversations about logistics and about how the Ukraine is doing the right thing and not attacking that convoy and instead focusing on the logistics and starving out those soldiers to bring down their morale, and they can't move anyways. What's the point in attacking something that can't threaten you, right? It would be cool, it would look great, but it served no purpose. And we talked about the logistics and logistical challenges of supplying a force and keeping a force readily supplied when you extend it without creating forward operating bases. Um, hey, Isa, that's what I'm here. So Isa says, "I really know nothing. You are teaching me." That's what I'm here for, right? Now I don't know everything. I've been very forward. You know, I've learned a lot about airplanes and all that stuff here recently, but and naval capabilities and naval maneuvering and anti-ship capabilities. That's not my bread and butter, and that's what Marines are for. Okay. Uh-huh. Cool. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, well, we had that conversation about 7.62 and the difference between it and 5.56 and you know, the different rounds like 30 like you know, 30 millimeter cannon versus 150 millimeter. Yeah. Like I mean, but that was my job, right? Now I never messed with 30 millimeter cannons, right? That was the 30 millimeter and up, right? Those are on that's when you get into the guys who are part of like um artillery or part of armored division, stuff like that, because that's above crew serve, right? And I was always part of mechanized infantry and infantry. So, uh, though we do have mechanized infantry vehicles that use 30 millimeter rounds, that's usually handled by a different sector of people. That those are the armor guys, and the armor guys are responsible for fulfillment of those types of deals. Um, and working in S4 is like I oversee some of that, but wasn't really responsible for understanding it or how they work, the guns themselves work, because they're not crew serve weapons, they're armor weapons, they're armored vehicles. So, um, but I know the basics. So it says, I'm assuming we aren't giving our weapons away for free, correct? And it said, I would think we are giving them. Okay, guys. So there's two different sides. So there are aid packages, right, where we are giving away uh, arms. Okay. So the question was, is that they're trying to figure out. So are we giving them away for free, or are we making them buy them? Or okay, so we have three different programs. So there's the relief ones where basically we're just providing this military aid for free, aid, right? There is then the Lend Lease program, that has a lot of technicalities that I don't have the information in front of me to be accurate to talk to you about. I understand them, and if I had it in front of me, we could have that conversation. But there's lend lease, and that means basically you're leasing the equipment. If you use it, you owe us a certain amount, and there's some complicated information around. And then there's just straight purchases, right? So for example, uh, over half the military items coming from Germany have been purchased, right? The other parts have been military aid. For us, we've given them, okay, so their GDP, Ukrainian GDP is I think like was like 155 billion dollars. Okay, we provided them 33 billion dollars in military aid, so almost a third of their GDP. Like they couldn't afford our tech. Our tech is expensive. All right, that's why like people like Sweden are like, yo, we can make our own jets. Thank you. But we are not. We're not giving. All right, Slim. See you in a minute. Um, but we're not giving them away entirely. There's two parts. There's the military aid, lend lease, and then direct purchases, and that's going on with most of NATO. So the lend lease part is specific to America mostly. There's some other people who have joined in on that. But the military aid is coming from multiple countries, and then purchases are happening all the way across the NATO section, and in the EU. So it's a mixture of all of it. Some of it's given to them, some of it's purchased, some of it's lend leased. That I know that's a long answer, but I promise you it was the short version. So that's how that works. So defend Kherson against Ukrainian counterattacks. That's the other supporting effort, and this is where we were talking about Kherson and where they're going to have to make some decisions very quickly to hold the South or not hold the South. They can't let go of too much of the South, or else they might lose Crimea. Is the other thing that they're facing, and Crimea, resupply of Crimea is difficult because they only have one land bridge. They only have one bridge to Russia, and it can't handle it with the traffic on it. Even if you got rid of all the civilian traffic, it would be very difficult to handle constant resupply of Crimea. The perfect length answer. No problem. I appreciate it. All right. So Russian forces continued offensive operations towards Zaporizhia city, but did not conduct any attacks in Kherson or Mykolaiv Oblast. Um, Ukraine's Zaporia Oblast military administration reported that Russian forces attacked something. Can't. I'm not even going to try that. We're going to call that Huli. Attacked Huli near the Donetsk Oblast border. Through the day, the administration additionally stated that up to 13 battalion tactical groups are concentrated on this line of advance towards Zap City or the Donetsk Oblast administrative borders from the west. Through those battalion tactical groups are almost certainly under strength. Okay, so this is an important part right here, and I don't know why they would not really break into this. All right, so BTGs are exceptionally weak to losses. If they're under strength, they're almost combat ineffective. There was a great article that was written by a captain at the time of Fort Benning. I think he's a full bird colonel now, but here, BTG Russia Fort Benning. For those who don't know, Fort Benning is the home of the United States Infantry and the Rangers. So here it is. So go ahead, we'll grab this. So this PDF right here, and I'll put this in VC chat real quick so you guys can see it. But this right here explains basically about how the Russian battalion tactical group is formed and how its idea, how it's sort of carried out, how it's supposed to be structured, and how to defeat it, right? And so when you look at it, and it compares it to what at the time we no longer use BTG systems, but basically we've more modularized our military. But it talks about basically the advanced brigade combat team, and so basically the losses required for destruction, right? So a BTG is much smaller, but it also requires you lose 3 units, you're done, right? In tanks, you lose 12 infantry fighting vehicles, you're done, right? And this shows how many times more you would have to inflict damages to the United States military ABCT to do it. But anyways, This is battlefield math, and it's getting into force comparisons, and so showing how our systems are where our units are more resilient and therefore more likely to win and have effective combat outcomes against the Russian BTG, and that's neither here nor there. But basically, they can sustain very minor losses until they become combat ineffective. Okay, so and the other problem with the BTG is they require heavy infantry, okay, heavy infantry presence to defend them because they're slow moving. All right, and you have to have infantry to counter other infantry. Right, they're very weak to land attack, um, and to attack by air if they don't have appropriate infantry support to stop uh, air forces or appropriate air protection systems to stop them from being hit from the air, right? Um, so basically, you have the Russian BTG has 36, um, 36 squads, 36 infantry squads, which are 5 to 6 men each, usually, right? If they lose 11 of those squads, if they lose 50 people, right? Whether through injury, right? You can have partial losses where someone's not fully combat effective, so they're a partial loss, like they got hit in the leg, so they run with a limp and they can't run as fast, right? Or their shoulder got messed up and so they can't carry as much. Those are partially combat ineffective soldiers and troops, and they affect this too, right? Someone who, and when you combine, minor injuries, major injuries that remove them entirely from the combat field, and deaths, right? The Russian BTG is exceptionally weak to these losses, and it's one of the reasons that we focused on training Ukrainian infantry. But this is a great article. You guys should check it out. I'm gonna not focus on this as long, but yeah, we're about an hour in, guys. We're gonna drink some water. Mm. I quit smoking, by the way, guys, so that's positive, I guess. We're gonna hit this real quick. Go from there. So, what is this big thing? Yep. Oh man. So moving forward, BTGs, the way they're structured, yeah, then them being under strength means that they're going to require very minor hits and they're done. So yeah, very minor hits and they're done. This goes into talking about authorities know Russian forces operating in the region are more cautious than during the initial stage of the war and are increasing their use of reconnaissance assets, right? This shows a fear. The soldiers are fearful. They're not just, we're gonna get it, we can knock them out. I'm sorry about shaking the table, guys. We're just gonna knock them out, take them out. We got this, right? They're no longer confident like that. Um, a lack of confidence, along with, you need to practice some caution to not get your ass, whooped. Reconnaissance is always a good thing. Don't get me wrong. I'm not hating on these guys. Like, I don't like Russia. I don't want them to lose, but I also don't want people to lose their lives unnecessarily, right? I want them to quit fighting. Um, but caution, caution is lack of confidence, right? You should just be effective. There should be no caution. You should just do your job, and it should just be normal, and you should just be able to keep those wheels rolling. So when you're double and triple checking what you normally would do once, it's showing a lack of confidence and a lack of morale. So, oh, okay. Have a good night, Isa. I will actually hope to do the podcast on time tomorrow, and I apologize for that. Have a good night, and I appreciate you. All right. So moving forward, Russian forces did not conduct offensive operations in Kherson or Mykolaiv Oblast. Yeah, we already knew this. Russian authorities in occupied Crimea claimed on May 5th that Russian forces restored railway connections between Crimea and Kherson. We'll see how long that lasts. If that's true, railways are static targets that are very easy to hit. Um, we've given them a lot of missiles, so we'll leave that alone. This is more detailed around the Kherson offensive. You can see where. So the other night I was talking about they're trying to create the horseshoe. You can see that horseshoe, they've started to extend it, right? So they're finally forming the left and right side, and then they're going to try to connect it straight through here. and create a unified front. And then what you'll see is that they'll put a majority of their forces on the left and right and start to curve in, and then they're going to close the envelope, right? So it's just like an envelope. You got the box of the envelope. You have to create all the sides of the envelope, and then you just tuck down into it and destroy all of the. Oh, cool, awesome. And then you just destroy the forces in between. So you'll also see that here in Kirsten, there's a lot of indirect fire to take out artillery pieces and yeah, uh, the partisan warfare also. Being of the wolf, even its freedom comes at a cost. Absolutely, it does. It does. Moldova situational map. Listen, Moldova is staying the same. I think that they failed to get that front going. I don't think they have I don't think they have the effectiveness to really lead that uh, initiative and bring it to fruition. They also face some. How do I put this nicely? A lot of people fled out of the breakaway Moldova region, and we'll see what they do. They've been unable to effectively organize that initiative and get it up and rolling and going. Um, so I don't think that this is a huge deal here. Um, Ukrainian general staff. So Sumy in northeastern Ukraine reported that some identified Belarusian units increased their combat readiness amid ongoing snap exercises. Listen, Belarus, unless they're absolutely forced to, is not getting involved in this fight, guys. I'm going to call it here. You guys can count that as a prediction. Belarus will not get involved in this fight anytime soon. They're conducting, their basic maneuvers and other things like that, but they have no appetite to join into this fight unless Russia forces their hand, and they have found every excuse to not do that. You know what? I need some. Let's do some. Get this Mio going. So. Anyways, again, guys, not sponsored by anybody because I'm too small, but this stuff's good, so why not? Belarus is a little bit. No, they're smart. They're smart, right? Listen. They know that Russia will use them and throw them away. Okay, they're not dumb. Lukashenko is just trying to keep a hold of his power. That's all he cares about. But he's not fooled. He knows that Putin is not his friend. He is a pawn. He is something to be used by Russia, and he's going to do his best to preserve himself, and not be a pawn that just gets thrown away. Immediate items to watch. Russian forces will likely continue to merge offensive efforts southward of Izium with westward advances from Donetsk in order to encircle Ukrainian troops in southern Kharkiv Oblast, blah, blah, blah. Russia may change the status of the Donetsk and Luhansk peoples, possibly by merging them into a single Donbass republic. I expected this. I made that call. I don't know if they'll actually do it. Annexing them directly to Russia would be problematic, considering that they said that that was not their intention when they started all of this, and would make them out to be more of liars, and it would be very hard for them to fix that story to the Russian people. Mm. So, go ahead. Yeah, what's up? Mhm. I think they're already getting there. That's why they have to find a way to reconstitute their forces. Their BTGs are broken and beaten down. That what they need to do, and this is what I would do if I was them, right? They're at risk of dedicating too much forces. So what you don't want to do is trickle feed forces into just utter destruction, right? Belarusian president said he didn't think the war would drag on this way and kept calling it a war. I thought that was a big statement to make. Yeah, true. Like leaking of the map. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. He's smart. Lukashenko is doing his thing. But back to Styles' question. What I think is going to happen here is if they continue the way they're doing, just slowly feeding in forces that are not properly trained, not reconstituting their forces' combat readiness, combat effectiveness, and increasing their combat power in those regions, they're eventually going to lose all morale. They're going to lose a considerable amount of their effective military, putting a strain on their ability to defend Russia itself. All right, and they will consistently lose ground to the point where um and lose money, and that's really the big thing here, losing money through the loss of forces. Oh, can you guys?
Or
Oh, you guys can't hear him. I'm sorry. You guys can hear him now. Go ahead. Sorry.
sorry, my microphone's probably a little distant.
No, it's fine. I had desktop audio muted. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Um, so I'm just wondering why why they haven't decided, the Russians haven't decided to just hold the ground that they currently have, establish leaders,
Hmm.
mayors, politicians to those territories, hold those grounds, establish those grounds, not continue to push for more, right? And bring in proper forces
Hmm.
to just take Mariupol.
Well,
That's the only thing they want.
well, we had that discussion the other day. I said that they should stop what they're doing, hold their ground, and take their time. They have the clock is on their side, right? They're
Yes,
pushing towards these dates that don't really matter, right? There's a word I want to use here, but I can't remember it. I got to start getting better at that. But anyways, they're just these dates that don't matter, and so what they really need to do is stop what they're doing, hold their lines, right? Send in ill-trained reinforcements just to reconstitute quickly, because you don't need heavily trained forces just to hold where you're at as long as they know enough. Take their time, take 3 to 4 months to train some forces, call up individuals, start sending them through basic training, their equivalent of AIT, right? Training them on their, getting them appropriately geared, assigning them appropriate equipment, establishing. While you do this, you can establish appropriate supply lines, right? Creating fobs and forward operating bases around these roads while they're still inside of Russian controlled areas. Yeah,
the
yeah,
Russians
inside of.
just have these
Hmm.
taken over territories to be now part of Russia.
Yeah, and
Start that
basically what.
process.
So start that process, right? While you're doing this, develop your supply lines at the same time. Start training forces so they are combat effective and they know their jobs and they're not just a bunch of oofs running around like idiots, right?
Yeah,
And so that they can effectively merge with your BTGs, strengthen your combat forces and combat effectiveness, right? And which, it increases combat strength. So you have an effective force that you can push forward with instead of just throwing these poor guys who have had minimal training into the middle of the grinder consistently and just losing forces for no reason.
exactly. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
in 4 days, he wants to have some sort of victory day. And, like, I mean, it should be, somewhat peaceful, peaceful in the area, and the general public in those now Russian controlled areas
That
should
date is
now,
so arbitrary, right? Like
well,
what?
it's arbitrary, but it's important for them, you know,
Yeah.
and it's something they should have aimed for.
Yeah, but they
Also,
should have done it. So they opened up too many fronts in the first place. They didn't appropriately have logistics. I think that Putin, there's conflict in the intel community whether Putin was misinformed or not, right? They've done a lot of things wrong in the beginning of the war that just have cost them this entire conflict. I'm not sure Russia can recover from this. Okay, Ukraine is a very tough country. All right, the Ukrainian people are very well known for their hardiness and fierceness. Okay, and their belligerence. They're and not in a bad way. Like belligerence can be a positive thing. They're just not going to take shit from you, right? And so I think it might be beyond repair at this point. I think Russia needs to really measure what it considers a victory and find a way to create victory out of this. I think that it would make sense for them to get it. Luhansk and Donetsk stay part of Ukraine but become independent city states, right? I think that proposal could work because it meets the requirement of Zelensky. We're not surrendering, lands, right? But it gets an independent Luhansk, an independent Donetsk, right? They're independent city states, just like Sicily is to Italy, right? But they're still a part of Ukraine. And then you create a sharing agreement for Crimea, right? That allows you to keep your warm water ports, and it's in, peace is enforced by an independent or security guarantees around Crimea that China and India or whoever will guarantee that you know Russia's Russia's not is protected in the Crimea region, and at the same time Ukraine has security guarantees from whatever countries it decides, right, to guarantee that, hey, your access to Crimea and use of Crimea is also going to be protected. Share the Crimean Peninsula, right? Create an independent city state in Luhansk and Donetsk, right? Which gives exactly what Vladimir Putin said he wanted, right? Let them operate independently while still being a part of Ukraine, and you're good. Like, that's a win, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And you can make it out to, hey, look, the NATO and the allies capitulated to our demands. Well, that's really not what happened, but whatever, and everybody wins. But I don't see why the stubbornness on part of Russia, I think, is going to be their downfall. Either they're going to negotiate or they're going to fall. I don't see them winning this war. It's not going to happen.
It's because of his. I keep saying his because he's not the only one making these decisions. But anyways, I think the Russians' constant um, willing wantingness to keep fighting when they really don't need to brings back my original question. Do you think they could possibly fight their way out of Ukraine, being, you know,
What do
pushed
you mean fight their way out of Ukraine? You mean just they just suffer so many
fight
losses that
too
they just can't?
much,
Yeah,
fight too much that they lose everything
yeah,
they've gained?
yeah. I think that that's entirely possible to some degree. Um, the problem you're going to run into right there is that in the Donetsk and Luhansk, they've fomented so much anti-Ukrainian sentiment since 2013, 2014 with their implanted forces, and there's a lot of transplanted Russians in those areas, right, that live there.
But I think they're
Um,
screwing it up just by being there too long.
yeah.
Now, what they used to be Russian support, they're going, they're idiots. Maybe the Ukrainians are right, and they
Or
could.
there's a counter to that coin though, right? Look, these they just won't let you be. They just won't let you alone. We're doing our best. We're supporting you, and we even at our own cost, at great cost to us. We want you to be independent. We want you to have these things. Like you can churn it. It all depends on how well they can control the information, right? Um, but you also have some older people who have been reminded of this grandiose idea of what it was like under the USSR, and there's some articles around this, and those people are going to be they're, this society, Ukrainian society, is very matriarchal, okay, um, and so there's a lot of respect around the grandmother and the older women in the families, right? And those people in these regions, right? A majority of them are very pro-Russia because they have this fondness, this idea of um, what it used to be like under the USSR. When your reminiscence is very one-sided. You remember the good things usually. You usually reminisce about the positives and leave out the negatives, and you do it subconsciously. So unless you're able to get through about how things would be better once Ukraine is back in control, if we stop this conflict, unless you have that war, you're still going to have these pockets of resistance. They're still going to have guns. It's going to be a very hard to control area. So even if Russia fights itself out to where basically it's only the local groups that are causing you problems, they're still going to be well armed by Russia, and they're just going to keep throwing them weapons, right? And every time you kill somebody's cousin, you got 3 more people who now hate you, right? That's the problem we ran into in the Middle East, is that you cannot win the war there because when you keep killing people, which is what happens in war, guys, at the end of the day, you're killing other people. for believing that they're just as right as you believe you are. Okay? There's no glory in war. You learn that very quickly, that these people believe they're just as right as you are. Or they're led to believe that through misinformation or other things. It doesn't matter, because when you kill them, right, you're killing someone's brother, someone's son, someone's cousin, someone's best friend, right? And those people now hold a sentiment against you, and there's a part of them. And remember, these are, these are now, 5 to 10 people who dislike you, right? And a fraction of them, a portion of them, around 15 to 20% are going to be able to be recruited to these causes, right? So you basically multiply forces by killing a person. You basically create 2 new soldiers for them by killing one. And it's a very difficult position to win. Very difficult position to win. Breakaway regions are very hard to get back in control of, because the way you get, if you try to use military force to take control of them again, unless you're just able to have an absolute supreme victory and then create, the police and militias necessary in the area to quell a counterinsurgency. I mean, a insurgency. You're just kind of screwed, and you keep creating enemies. And they keep multiplying. For every one you destroy, you get 2 more. It's like Cerberus. And so,
yeah. I understand. But
so could they fight themselves into a hole? Absolutely. But I don't think those areas would ever entirely fall to Ukraine as long as Russia kept supplying them basic arms. The answer, the short one.
So that little problem over in the east is always going to exist, no matter what.
Unless you get rid of unless you change the narrative and the mindset, you're not going to be able to do it through military means. It's just not possible. You can't. Like, listen, the U.S. military is unquestionably the best military in the world. Okay. We don't lose fights. We go in and we destroy you. Okay. And even being the best military in the world, all right, no matter how you frame it, all right, the Afghanistan war was a loss. Why? Because we failed to recognize that maybe not all cultures want or are able to implement or comprehend democracy in the way that we think about it. And it's short-sighted of us, right? We didn't change that perspective. We didn't educate that perspective. We didn't try to skew it. We just kept throwing money at it and hoping people would be like, oh, awesome. Right? And in the process, while fighting against people who, they understood how the Taliban worked, right? They understood the government. It was very close to a religion that's common to most of them, right? And so you had and even though these people did atrocious things, they still understood it. They still had a concept in that these people they could deal with, they could make deals with. They knew how to survive under their rule. And until you change that, you were never going to win that war. Sometimes there's different ways to win a war. And sometimes the best way to win a war is to never fire a shot. So,
yeah.
And I'll leave it at that. I'm getting a little long-winded on that one, and I apologize. So,
it needs to be fully explained.
Yeah. So Slim brought up the next thing I was going to bring. The other thing that's going on right now is there's a huge heat wave. We covered this in episode 2 of the podcast. There's a huge heat wave that's going on in India, and we were really expecting India. India really wanted to step into the hole that it's all was going to happen with wheat production in Ukraine, and they're right now looking at they might not produce enough wheat to support themselves because of a super early and ridiculous heat wave that's hit India. And India was really trying to step up to the plate to capitalize on the shortfall of wheat and grain coming out of Ukraine. And Ukraine planned on using its wheat and grain reserves that it had to sort of make up for the shortfall of this year's crop. And those have been plundered by Russia. So this war is going to have outward effects on our food supply and our food chain. And I think that's we have to be careful to control that narrative so Russia can't make it out to be, well, if NATO would stop opposing us, you wouldn't have to suffer and be starving, right? And wheat is used in everything from cosmetics to, we went through this the other day, from cosmetics to foods to plastics to all types of stuff you would never figure. And the U.S. could definitely step up its wheat production, right? We actually pay farmers not to grow crops here sometimes, sadly enough. Um, so we'll see, but it's really gonna hurt us. This war really affects us in multiple ways, and we already have issues here in the U.S. where we have a very polarized country, and I don't think it's a majority. I think the people who are most polarized are the most vocal and get the most attention. But yeah, you got a boogie, Jim. Thank you for joining us. I appreciate you. Uh, but right now, it's looking at there might be a severe food shortage in Africa, right? Like that seems to be coming. Um,
Here, Jim.
uh, let's see. And
Yeah, right.
I just don't go ahead. Sorry.
To me, it's a little bit. Sorry, I'm from Canada. For anybody listening and doesn't know,
Who hasn't figured that out yet?
there's
Hey.
some talks right now.
Mm-hmm.
There's some talks and like some quick moves being done in Alberta where farmers are adjacent to unclaimed lands, and these farmers are making requests to have access to these lands, not ownership, but access to these lands. Give us whatever wheat seeds you have, Ukraine. Give it to us. We will grow it in your basically they want to donate their time, equipment, and free land. They need the permit from the government of Canada. The government of Canada wants to
Good luck.
expedite this whole process,
Mm-hmm.
but I I feel as though it's a little late in the season.
Yeah.
Like I mean, that land should have been that land should have been tilled by now.
Yeah, I was
You know,
wondering, isn't the growing season in Canada really short, considering the weather and how close you guys are to the? I mean, because I know people
it,
think that North America is straight up, but Canada's kind of skewed, right?
it
To
it's weird
where,
because
yeah.
I first of all, Canada and Ukraine have very similar climates,
Mm-hmm.
so we have a different kind of wheat seed because it's been grown and germinated in this climate. So it is a more resilient. It can withstand cold weathers, so it can stretch over a longer period of time. Where um, maybe in the mid states and stuff, you might get two crops.
Mm-hmm.
We only get one,
Yeah,
you know, type of idea. So we have enough to do a crop,
a crop. Yeah, makes sense.
but we
That would be awesome. Especially with what's going on right now, uh, it seems that we're gonna have a shortfall of wheat, and if that happens, guys, you guys also got to understand that um, wheat production affects corn production. Usually, they're sort of tied together because corn
yeah,
offsets wheat as a replacement, and that affects fuel prices. Okay, because corn is used to create um, modern diesel, biodiesel specifically. Um, yeah.
corn is used to make
Go
so
ahead, sir.
much.
Hmm. Wait,
Yeah,
that's a sweet thought because Canada has the second highest population of Ukrainians too.
yes,
Interesting. I didn't know that.
yeah,
Yeah, folks should be stocking up on food now. Hey guys, I have a year supply for me, my kids, and another person. Um,
same ration
so
packs.
yeah, I have I know we talked about this before, but mine are like the big bucket ones that like have all the different meals. He has these bricks that are kind of cool. But guys, always have some food set aside, no matter what. Whether you want it, it's not a prepper thing. Like if a natural disaster happens or you're cut off from food for 2 weeks or so, having just enough just to get through 2-3 weeks is a good idea. It's not paranoia. It's it's just being ready for even natural disasters. Water with chlorine tabs or iodine tabs for them, blah blah blah. Stuff like that. That's always be prepared because you don't know what can happen, and that's not a bad thing. It doesn't make you paranoid or bad. We really need to stop. demonizing people who are just trying to, be ready for what may come.
Yeah, it's not a tinfoil hat kind of,
That's what I was
thing.
looking for.
Like,
Yep.
I mean, um, a lot of people just their vehicles.
Hmm.
People don't have a first aid kit. Like at any time, the I don't know, the radiator could overheat and you're stuck on the side of the highway or down
Yep.
some dirt road, and no one's coming by for the next 24 hours. Now
Yo,
you and somebody
hmm
else is, like
Or especially like
overheating
when you're in the north.
or freezing or
Yeah.
whatever. I,
Especially
you know,
when you're in the north, like those little aluminum blanket looking things, right? Fucking
yeah,
lifesavers.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
But
the,
like
yeah.
people, I find people are ill prepared,
Hmm.
and so these little ration packs.
Hmm.
You would not be able to. I know we talked about these ration packs. You would not be able to carry your 1 year supply, would you?
No, mine I couldn't carry. No, but I could pack it out if I needed to.
Oh no, I could carry me and my whole family's 1 year supply. I could carry it on my back for a year, and it would not weigh me down.
Yeah, no, mine is less mobile. You
It's
know.
50 pounds, 50 pounds, the whole thing, and that's all you need for a year.
Yeah, mine's the four Patriots supply piece. I got
Yeah,
the year
yeah.
supply, but yeah, so I could pack out maybe, a month or so of each person, but I couldn't do more
You
than
have
that.
Patriot Supply. Does that include the seeds? You could like start your own garden. It's got like a little seed pack with it.
They do have seed packs in there or whatever, as a bonus, but I don't know. I really didn't care about that. I opened one because like one time like I got a client decided not to pay and I didn't have, money for food, so I broke them out. Hey, perfect example. Shit goes wrong financially, you got it in reserve, right? Um, so
What I what items would I pack?
what items would you pack? Are you talking about like for a bug out bag or like for food supplies, Luna? Like clarify for us. Help us out here.
Well, actually, like I mean, like a bug out bag. Um, bug out bag. All of us
Because
have a bug out bag. Bug out
yeah.
bag means emergency run,
Mm-hmm.
right? Just run for the hills or whatever, or be prepared.
Mine's a little weird, but I'll let you go
Like I mean,
ahead.
I obviously I obviously live in a climate where we get full 4 seasons. So I have everything from a snowsuit to swimming trunks, right? So I have all 4 seasons of clothes, and I've got enough food for a year. A lighter, sorry, there's 5 lighters in there, and a knife. That's
Cool.
all I need.
Yeah.
The
So
rest of it,
for
I could build shelter. I could build, uh,
yeah. All
yeah.
right. So for mine's a little different. So I have a crossbow, arrows, flint, and strike. Right. So I can start a fire, steel and flint, as it's called. Um, I have a basic first aid compression kit, uh, Instaclot, which is a powder you pour on a wound and it causes it to clot immediately, which is not contained in most first aid packs, right? Um, I have a hatchet, a multi tool, which is like a shovel, axe, all that stuff. It's heavier duty. It's bigger than the small hatchet. Small hatchet is great, but if you're trying to cut down something a little bigger, trying to do it with a hatchet is a bitch. Um, the, people ask me why a crossbow, because if you're in that type of situation where you actually need to use something like that, right? The last thing I want to do is have a report from a firearm that someone can follow. Okay,
I
crossbows
just
are effective. I can reuse the arrows, right? I can repair the arrows. I can create new arrowheads, and my arrows themselves are carbon fiber shafts, right? So the chances of them getting broken are slim to none. Um,
I just want to
go ahead, sorry.
answer Luna's
Yeah.
question. Said something about the why my bug out. Something about 50 pounds. Um, my bug out's not 50 pounds. The food that's in there is 50 pounds. Um, the food that I have, you don't need a lot of food in a whole day. You actually it's just you need a certain amount of nutrients, a certain
Yeah.
amount of nutrients, a certain amount of carbohydrates, a certain amount of um, I'll just say
Yeah.
nutrients. I'm
Well,
tripping on words. The
it's
bars that
fine.
I have,
Yep.
they come from, it's called superfoods.
Yeah, we couldn't find
If you
them.
go to superfoods.com, you'll see the stuff there. One bar is good for a whole day. The bar weighs a quarter of a pound, not even. It's a chocolate bar.
Yeah.
So I need 365 chocolate bars for myself.
Yeah.
And
And
there's only three in the family, so I'm carrying
so I
a little over
also
1,000 chocolate bars.
yeah, so I also have a life straw. I have a personal life straw, and then um which is it's like $15, guys. Like literally. I have every last bug out bag has a life straw. These things are great.
Oh yeah.
And then I have the bigger one, but these things are great if you need to, if you have a lack of water or pure, or it gets rid of bacteria, parasites, microplastics, dirt, sand, and cloudiness. Um,
The only thing I forgot about
yeah,
my bug out bag, I added paracords.
yeah. So that's the other thing I was gonna get. So I actually have 100-mile-an-hour tape, duct tape, guys, duct tape. Um, and I have the paracord wrist pieces. Um, and again, you never know. Like example, I literally was having problems where I couldn't buy food, and I was able to break into the uh I was able to break into the my reserves and feed myself. You never know. Like it's not just, oh, I'm paranoid that the world's gonna end. Like that's not it. It's possible, but it's not what I'm prepared for. I'm preparing for, things go bad, shit happens. But yeah, paracord. And then I also have a lockpick, mobile lockpick set. It's really small. And I have basically what are called Vita bars, which basically give you a day's worth of calories and vitamins, but they taste like a brick. Um,
Yeah,
they're
these
not
don't taste
great.
good.
Yeah.
They don't taste good. Yeah, it tastes like cardboard, whatever.
Yeah, and
But
so I also have Lifestraw. I don't know if they make them anymore, but they had a piece that like connects to a camel bag, so I can literally go to like a creek or something like that and fill up my camel pack with water from that creek, and then when I drink it, it passes through the Lifestraw.
how
Um,
heavy is your bug out bag?
it depends. Fully loaded. So if do you count the crossbow and the arrows?
Well, how much weight are you carrying?
Like
You're walking down
60,
the road.
64 pounds, 64 to 71 pounds.
And does that include your clothes in there?
Yeah, so I have Gore-Texes, right?
Yeah.
um Thinsulate layer, right? So like thermals in case I need them. um and so I have light thermals and then heavy thermals, uh and then
Yeah, not canned
Gore-Tex.
food.
Huh?
Somebody mentioned canned foods. I was thinking canned foods. No, bad idea.
No. So yeah, if you're gonna have in like your basement or something, yeah, but we're talking about being mobile, right? Like if you're trying to be mobile, you need to be able to hunt your own food. Like I have enough stuff, like, so my hatchet also has like a knife inside of it, so I can skin a deer, right? I can skin a rabbit, and I know how to hunt and prepare small game. So that's basically it. um so yeah, if you're it's too heavy, carrying cans, you eat them once, they're super heavy. um a lot of it has to be prepared, and if it gets punctured or dented, there's risk of bacterial growth and can kill you. What is that stuff called when you have like a damaged can? I can't remember what it's called. So but yeah, but also with a hatchet and other things like that, you can prepare and create shelter. But we need to get moving on to our other subjects. But yeah, I'm glad that we could have this conversation. But yeah, we can definitely talk, and you know what, that's a great thing we can probably put in the random channel or something like that, or in VC chat later, and talk about the contents and taking pictures of it and all that. The one other thing I forgot to mention is I actually have a lithium ion battery, like one of the on the go charge packs, with solar cell on it, so I can recharge it if I need to, if I don't have the ability to get to a wall. And that's great for the GPS unit that I have. So, yep. But yeah, we can definitely. But yeah, guys, nothing wrong with having a bug out bag. Don't let anybody make you feel bad if you do. All right, guys. So we've covered pretty much in depth the Russian campaign assessment, and international news and everything in between, and bug out bags and military structures. So I think it's about time we move on, man. So, all right, moving onward. So we are going to skip some things. We're going to talk about Dave Chappelle. We're going to lighten the mood real quick. We're going to talk about Dave Chappelle on stage getting attacked. Man, it was actually quite nuts. So so basically Dave Chappelle was on stage giving a speech, and he let me close out the live straw. Man, I need some people to sponsor this. So basically, he was. Let me go and grab the other side. It's in a YouTube video. So we'll show the YouTube video really quickly and go from there. So why is it not here? Where did it go? Man, that's crazy. Oh, here it is. Here we go. Yep. All right. So, oh, I need to put my ad blocker on here.
Dave Chappelle attacked.
History.
So this guy apparently had like a knife and a fake gun. But
Netflix is a joke festival. The Los Angeles Police Department confirms to ET that they responded to an incident.
They responded. Basically, they stomped this guy's ass all the way into the back. And then Chris Rock. Yo, look at this guy's arm. Hold on. Yo, look at this guy's arm when he's getting. Like, you see how his arm is? His arm is like reversed. Like, his arm is bending the wrong way. Look at his arm is jacked the hell up. Somebody fucked him up.
Tells ET that Chappelle did a good job.
But no, he kept going with the show. Chris Rock came out to basically make a joke
Festival before Chappelle returned to the stage to make a joke.
Yep.
Naturally asking,
was that Will Smith?
Yo, was that Will Smith?
Of course, that.
And then Jamie Foxx also came out to support his friend. He was there. Apparently, Jamie Foxx was ready to throw blows.
I just stomped the nigga backstage. Always wanted to do that. Everybody compose yourselves. I wanted this to be a peaceful moment, and I'm sure now
But did people actually leave the show, or did they all stay?
Oh, most people stayed, and he just kept going.
Jamie Foxx,
Okay.
who he said was right by his side.
Shout out to Jamie Foxx, by the way. Whenever you're in trouble, Jamie Foxx would show up in the sheriff's hat. I thought that was part of the show. I don't know what the f is. I grabbed the back of that nigga's head. His hair was spongy. Absorbent.
And Fox,
It
he
wasn't
gave
a
that
slap
love
from Will
right
Smith,
back
so.
to his pal.
Listen, I just want to say, man, I've had an incredible time. This man is an absolute genius. We got to make sure we protect him at all times, man. This is what it's about.
This is what I'm talking about. Where
this means everything, man. You're a genius. You're a legend. I enjoyed myself thoroughly, and we're not gonna let nothing happen to you.
That's right.
Give it up.
So that's the thing, man. So basically, this goes back. This guy was outraged apparently at the LGBTQ comments that Dave Chappelle has made. Guys, this is comedy, okay? It's a fucking joke. All right? Everybody gets it. White people, black people, Asian people, LGBT people, cute, straight people, gay people. He jokes about everybody. All right? It's not comedy is meant to take awkward subjects and awkward moments and bring humor out of them. All right. And some jokes people say are gonna be offensive to somebody, right? But this is what the First Amendment is about in America. And there was a time when liberals, coming from a guy who considered himself a longtime liberal, okay, we were about the First Amendment, being against big corporations. The ACLU used to fight for people to be able to speak, not for restriction of speech. I don't know how we flip this shit, okay? But this man is a legend. He's funny. You knew what you were getting when you signed up to go to his show. If you don't like what he's saying, don't watch it. Just don't watch it. You can avoid being offended. Don't like what you hear? Turn it off. Don't want to hear his jokes because you find them offensive? Don't go to his shows.
I think
right?
every comedian gets heckled. Heckling is okay. It's okay, but get ready because you're gonna get attacked.
They're gonna light you on fire.
They're gonna light you. But if you want to attack a comedian, that's the way you do it. Be prepared.
Yeah. But putting your hands on somebody, guys, words do not equate to violence. This is a legal doctrine. Words do not equate. I don't care what anyone on the left tells you. All right. So the Supreme Court literally said words are not violence, right? Now, people point to doctrines such as the fighting words doctrine. That's when someone says something absolutely so heinous that anyone, and again, not a lawyer, consult a lawyer about this, talk to lawyers about your state laws. I'm not giving you any form of legal advice. I'm talking about what I understand from a legal perspective from my friends who are all lawyers, right? But Justice Murphy, Francis W. Murphy, wrote for a unanimous court and held that certain written and spoken words are exempt from the First Amendment and protection when they instigate violence from the people listening to them, meaning a call to action, okay? There's also the fighting words document that meant to incite violence such that they may not be protected under free speech, which means that if you come up and you say some shit that would normally cause me to want to fight you and you do it with the purpose of instigating a violent reaction, right? Those things do not apply here. This is a comedy show, guys, a comedy show. And it is the basic principle that comedy should be allowed to be offensive. Period. Some comics are offensive. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not to attack a certain person. It's to find humor in shitty situations. Or sometimes to find what's the word I'm looking for? Like the Babylon Bee, guys. Who's taking them seriously? They are clearly satire. Sometimes satire is to show us how ridiculous some of the shit we believe is. It's important for checking society. It's an important check on our societal views to be able to point out and show us how ridiculous some of the stuff we're saying is. Period. And it should happen to everybody. It happens to the right, and now it's happening to the left. Right? And it's to bring us back to the center. It's to check how polarized we're becoming. Period. You know?
One of my favorite comedians is Drew Lynch.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if everyone knows who Drew Lynch is, but he's a stuttering comedian, or he's a comedian with a stutter. And he had an interesting. I won't get into the topic, but he had an interesting topic that I watched just yesterday or today. And where his stutter got in the way, basically. And it was a subject that I, if I was a comedian, I would never bring on stage. But he did it in a way that, it got you like, ooh, that's dangerous. Don't go there.
Mm-hmm.
But it came over okay for me. I'm sure there was maybe somebody offended in the audience, and he does mention that some people get offended at that joke, and he talks about it and stuff. I think all comedians face that. Doesn't matter what you talk about.
Yeah.
You know,
So
I think
people
some
need,
people were even offended at Robin Williams' jokes.
yeah,
You know,
no,
as
absolutely. So
simple as
there's
he puts
two key holdings that have came forward. Speech is not violence, meaning that violence is not a form of protected speech. Okay.
Yeah.
Number one. Number two, that speech is not violence. Okay. Unless nothing. It's literally that. But there are some forms of speech that can incite violence. And that incitement is not protected by the First Amendment. Saying, hey, I want all of you to go kill such and such or some other group, right? Can't say that.
Yeah.
Can't say that. That's a call to action, right? It's a call to violence. You cannot do that. That is not protected by the First Amendment. And that's held in the main case that holds it, right, is in Chaplinsky versus New Hampshire, which basically said by their very utterance, inflict injury and tend to incite an immediate breach of the peace. Okay. Not protected by the First Amendment. Right. And then there was also, excuse me, sorry. You know, they also said that, but offensive speech is not violence in and of itself. And most offensive speech is not to the level to be a defense to an act of violence against another person, as speech is not violence and should never be considered violence, as the scope could creep to cover many things which were never intended by a finding. That's the summarization. All right. So we cannot allow free speech to become a reason that someone attacks you just because they don't like what they say. And we should never support that. You have a right to get things wrong, to say offensive shit, okay? And to be a generally demonstrable person as long as you're not calling for violence. And the reason why is because if we start regulating you can't say offensive things. Well, guess what? In the 1960s and 1970s, it was offensive to fight for gay rights. In the 1960s and 1970s, it was offensive to fight for, and in mainstream media, because it was mostly consumed by people who were holding specific views. 1950s and 60s, it was considered offensive to say black people are equivalent to white people in a majority of the country. So by that same standard, right? If we would have said you can't have offensive speech, we wouldn't have the modern rights that people have. And again, I've made it very clear. I believe every human being on this planet has intrinsic value and should have the rights of every other human being just by being human. You have intrinsic value just by being alive. Right? And that holds true. And I don't care who you are, what your faith is, anything else. There are no exceptions to that. Period. For me. And that's not just based on my faith. That's how I feel. A lot of times people are valued for what they can provide or what they can do for you or no, people's value should not be determined by that. People have value just by being alive. And if we taught that to more people, maybe we might have a more peaceful world. But you cannot attack someone because they say something that offends you. Because that opens justification to anyone, and including people you don't like or you think are abhorrent to, oh, well, what you said offended me, so I attacked you.
Yeah.
You can't do that. It would allow white supremacists to attack people talking about wanting free rights, right?
So, well, somebody mentioned in chat that, Will Smith kind of opened up that floodgate.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. That'll prove true if these events start happening more and more often now.
Can I think of his name? He was one of my favorites. He died, but Carl, comedian. Yeah. So, yeah, George Carlin, right? So George Carlin, one of my favorite comedians. Okay. Back when he was doing his initial HBO specials, his later HBO specials in the early mid 90s. Okay. What he was saying was considered incredibly offensive. All right. incredibly offensive. Yes, I know he's on the far. I don't care. He was fucking funny. All right. It was considered incredibly offensive. What if we had banned him? Right now, he's heavily embraced by the modern left. Right, but people don't get his comedy was meant to be extreme. Right, he was including satire of the left and using a very far left point of view to objectively make fun of the right while making fun. It's hilarious. Okay. And people don't get it. George Carlin is actually more of a centrist in his personal life, but we're going to leave that alone.
I come across. I'm just looking at like world news and different stuff going on. Going back to Putin, I guess. I'm reading something here. Give me a quick
What's
second.
in a VC chat?
I switch page. Putin apologized for foreign minister's Hitler remarks.
I was going to come up on that next. Yeah. He apologized to the Israeli ambassador for him. Yeah. For his defense secretary's comments about Jews and Jewish blood in Zelensky. Yep.
No, wasn't it in? Oh, in Zelensky, I thought he said in Hitler.
Yeah, so in Hitler, yeah, that's right. Yeah. And making that comparison, Jewish that Hitler had Jewish blood. Yep. Sorry.
But didn't Hitler have Jewish blood? Wasn't his mother a Jew? Hitler's mom?
Hold on. Roots of the zombie claim that Hitler had Jewish blood, I believe. Hold on. So, the Washington Post says there's no evidence. Hold on. Let me see.
Pretty sure his mother was a Jewish woman.
So they debunked it. So hold on. Does Hitler have Jewish ancestry? Historians have yet to find evidence that suggests that Hitler had Jewish ancestry. Many have said that Hitler's mother was Jewish. This has been found credibly false, as his mother was a strong Catholic. Other questions about Hitler's ancestry often come due to his father Alois being illegitimate. Alois's mother worked for a Jewish family, but there is no evidence to suggest that she was Jewish or followed the Jewish faith, or that Alois's father was Jewish. The claim that Hitler has Jewish ancestry is rooted in common anti-Semitism claims from far-right actors originating from a far-right movement in Germany that was then banned. And is often used to reframe Jewish people as the perpetrators of the Holocaust against other Jewish people.
I still don't see how that comment is offensive. The fact that whether he had Jewish blood or not, how is it offensive?
I think it's because it's a thing that's commonly used to dismiss the Holocaust as Jews killing themselves.
I don't care if I'm a white guy and they killed 6 million white guys.
Mostly did kill white people.
It's wrong.
It's wrong. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the offense comes from that it's commonly used to say that Jews killed Jews and to justify it as Jew-on-Jew violence, and therefore it was Jews that perpetrated it, not Germans, and it's used as a way to like slide the responsibility off of who committed it onto a different group instead of a nationalist group, right? It wasn't the Nazis that killed Jews. It was the Jews who killed Jews. The Nazis just happened to be the party at the time who was in power is often the common, I think, the common narrative, I think, which I can understand how making that imposition might be offensive to some. Yeah, I honestly wouldn't have reacted on the world stage that strongly to it, but, you know, whatever, you know, I can't speak for other people. And I think that people have a choice to be offended at whatever they want to be offended at, right? Just don't expect everyone else to be offended for you and hate them if they're like, you know, which I think is a bigger issue these days. But, you know, what do I know? Also, we have to be very careful because we might be treading close to the YouTube TOS issues. And so we can have more of a discussion around whether they should be offended or not privately.
my next question on that, but staying safe, I guess, would be: it's really weird that Putin is apologizing for that statement. Where if I was in Putin's shoes, I'd make that former minister apologize publicly. I didn't make him do it, as opposed to me apologizing for your mistakes.
But they're never going to publicly apologize because that would be used, right?
But I would stage such an event just so I could have world, look, I'm a nice guy. I'm doing an apology. So what's the chances that this was a whole staged thing to make me look kind of like I do have a heart? You know what I mean?
Yeah, so there's been some questions about Israel's allegiances, right? Because of some interactions that have been going on. I don't know. I think we have to be careful that we don't become the bearers of misinformation or disinformation or of propaganda, right? And so I think that there's a saying that don't attribute malice to where one can explain it with incompetence or and so I'm gonna go with that one. You know, okay. Jay the Giant Peach, I gotta log off for the night. Thank you again, Carl, for spending your time with us. It's really awesome. Much you're welcome, Jay, and I'll see you later.
Take care, Jay.
Yeah, so it's kind of crazy, you know. We'll see how things turn out. You know, I think I don't want to attribute malice where it could just be people being dumb, right? So and maybe providing a positive. Go ahead, sorry.
We can move on from that story.
No, I get it. So we're good. The other thing, Elon Musk is apparently expected to serve as the temporary CEO of Twitter, according to MSNBC. So
he's buying Twitter.
Yeah, he's buying Twitter. So after the deal closes, right? So after the deal closes, they expect him to serve as he's most likely going to serve as the temporary CEO of Twitter until they find a new executive. Also, most of the tech executive team is expected to either resign or be replaced. There have been some rumblings internally. So for you guys who don't know, a lot of people have seen my LinkedIn. I'm a software engineer and I'm a pretty prolific one until a personal situation happened. I have friends who work for Twitter. I have friends who are developers in Twitter. And it seems that there have been changes to the code base. And again, this is unconfirmed. I cannot name the people who said these things. Okay. This is unconfirmed. But it seems there have been changes to the code base to remove parts of the algorithm that were specifically designed to silence a certain view. All right. And to also remove people from seeing certain viewpoints that they may agree with in order to effectively stop radicalization. Okay. But it was only aimed to stop radicalization from one side, is what it seems. And all of a sudden, millions of viewers started coming to people and individuals. And again, unconfirmed, the commits so there have been releases in which the commits do not align, and the original code changes that the commits changed have disappeared, right? So there's this thing called Git, and we use it, and there are accusations that the commits that have been rectified, where the code has been removed and the code has been changed, that caused these sways has been removed. Those commits have been removed from the history, and the new commits that fix them, right, or have been sort of bandaged up to look as if they're addressing another issue. So they basically roll back their changes to the algorithm, removed the history of those commits, and then made further changes, which you usually don't do unless you're trying to hide something. But it seems that it's quite possible that Elon Musk is absolutely right, that there was purposeful squelching happening within Twitter
Yeah.
and that they've gone to reverse that. So it seems like he could absolutely be entirely right. So,
Well, Twitter, what was it, 2 years ago, had released a statement where they do not follow the Second Amendment. They follow their own internal policy where
you mean the
it
First
looks
Amendment?
at,
The Second Amendment's about guns.
sorry, the First Amendment.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I'm Canadian. I get it wrong.
Yeah, you're good. It's okay.
And I say sorry a lot. So where Twitter has a policy to protect, I guess, the public, we'll say, and that's their standard. Elon Musk turns around and says, no, the policy is the First Amendment. That's the policy. You want to change the way Twitter works, change the First Amendment or have the government impose other laws that force Twitter to change.
Well, the problem I think is even with Elon buying Twitter, I think there needs to be reform of Section 230, which is what provides immunity to platforms that don't editorialize content, and we need to create a legal definition of what is editorializing, because right now there's no legal definition determined by the courts or Congress as to what editorialization is. Right? It's very vague.
Right. Yeah.
The First Amendment. So the problem is that the First Amendment was never, there was no way you could foresee that the town square would be replaced by these large private corporations, right?
Yeah.
And I try to be careful here because this is part of an argument that's also used by some to try to attack the Second Amendment, and I think that the context is quite different here, but I still like to be careful because I don't want to start that slippery slope. I think that if a place is the place where opinions and viewpoints and things travel the fastest and are adopted the most, and where most people get their information from, right? That if that thing is not open and free to all opinions and viewpoints, right? That's fine as long as they're a public company. The problem is that Twitter and these other places are taking direction from the executive branch, it seems, of the US government, right? Making them a government entity, which means the First Amendment applies, right? And then also they are under the effective thumb of other governments worldwide. And that creates a problem when they are guiding the public discussion within a country, which Twitter sadly often does for some fucking reason, even though it's a cesspool of.
Well, the other thing too is that the First Amendment was written and created in a time where my opinion traveled at a certain speed. Right? Like it only traveled across a city or across maybe a state in a day. And it took a long time to get around. So by the time you saw the volatility of just the anybody trying to make a movement, right? By the time you saw that volatility happen, forces could be put together to slow down this group. In today's world, I feel as though, like, not just the First Amendment US, but the freedom of speech context globally needs to be reconstrued to, there has to be now an etiquette attached to it.
Yeah.
You have the freedom within these perimeters now. And those perimeters, you have to roll it out really gently without offending people.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, one thing I want to point out is that people talk about, oh, well, the forefathers couldn't have seen high capacity weapons. Let me tell you guys something. Automatic weapons, high capacity weapons, guns, stuff like that, all existed. The problem is that their cartridges were exceptionally expensive to make, to where that they weren't able to be fielded at any type of mass, right? So because they were just too expensive to maintain and create, because precision tooling hadn't been created yet, right? For mass production. And so I want to make sure we clarify that the Second Amendment did cover, and they did have high capacity, large rounds, cannons. Like literally, it was asked to Jefferson. He signed writs like, "Hey, yeah, if you're out of America, we won't regulate you having cannons on your ships, right?" Which were equivalent to having a waterborne tank at the time. All right, so the puckle gun, right? Like it existed. This was an automatic 1718 anti-boarding weapon of the puckle gun used preloaded revolving cylinder that would fire 9 shots per minute. Right? It's more than 1 per 10 seconds. Like there were high capacity rifles, right? And the repeating rifle also was exceptional, but there were things like the knock volley guns and the duck foot pistol. They had the Ferguson rifle and early breechlesses. Like these things existed, guys. Like we had automatic, like the little churner guns that you could churn and would basically fire the rounds through the belt feed coming through it. But the rounds were super expensive, guys. Like they weren't new. They just weren't viable at the time because our production, modernization hadn't happened. The Industrial Revolution still was yet to happen. So now that we've covered that, since people like to use that to attack, well, it wasn't intended. Guess what? They knew about high capacity and that there could be automatic, because they had automatic weapons. They just weren't heavily fielded yet. They were still trying to solve problems with them. So here's the thing: the First Amendment never had any idea that there would be this instantaneous screen that was connected all throughout the world that you could just shoot shit over, and large corporations would control speech and viewpoints. There's no way. And it needs to be addressed. Period.
That's right.
So I just don't want this video to be used out of context. Well, you said this. Well, yeah, but this is the context, and this is why it's different. And here's how they did know about high capacity rifles and automatic weapons. Like they existed. They just weren't common.
I had a conversation today with one of my friends, and we're talking about, like, I mean, it started with talking about like Elon Musk's big dreams of establishing life on Mars and stuff like that. Will he ever see it in his days? Will our children, my children, ever see it in their days of having established civilization up there? And I think we're far away from it being reality, but I think it's going to be reality. And that brought us to the idea of life as we know it now, like in how technologically advanced we are, we're going to be far, way far, much further ahead in generations to come. But the government structure or the rules that apply now, for example, our constitutional rights here,
the charter,
your charter, your amendments, charters, and all that stuff, all that has to be rewritten to what I believe is going to be more of an etiquette guideline.
Well, the one thing people don't know about the U.S. is actually the founding fathers, Edison, I think it was. No, it's Jefferson. It's not Edison. I'm sorry. So Jefferson they made some changes that made it a lot harder to change the Constitution than it initially was, right?
Well, at the end of the Constitution, does it not say something about this Constitution can never get changed?
No.
Because I know in the Canadian Constitution, at the end of it, it says this can never be changed. And the Canadian government still fights to this day, like, no, we have to stay within it because that document says we can't change. And I keep telling myself, no, we need to rewrite it.
Provided in our Constitution for its revision as stated, period, solemn opportunity, every 19 to 20 years be handed on with periodical repairs from generation to generation to the end of time, was Jefferson's original intention for the Constitution.
Okay.
The founding fathers did not, of course, follow Jefferson's advice. Not only does the U.S. Constitution not allow for revision by each generation, but it can be amended only by votes of 2/3 of the House and the Senate and 3/4 of states' legislature. A number of states, however, proved more receptive to Jefferson's recommendations. Kentucky, Massachusetts, and New Hampshire have embraced periodic convention referenda in the 18th century, and today 14 state constitutions provide for them. So this is just like talking about the same thing, like where I think that laws, so we have things that get funded and never get reviewed again, and they just get funded endlessly, and then they get forgotten about as programs, and then they spend their budgets on things that are not even related to their original intention because people don't use their services, but they want to maintain their funding. The same thing with laws. Like, laws need to be revisited, and so there should be sunset revisions on every law that's ever created, so it's revisited and has to be, reapproved by the Senate, right, or by the Congress.
And we had talked about this before.
Yeah,
like the whole legal system needs to get redone.
right? Yeah, well,
Yeah.
just like I believe that the way district attorneys being elected means that rich people or large families in these counties or districts, right? Because some of them are decided by 40 to 60 votes. Who's the district attorney? Meaning they're scared to piss off. And so some people get more justice than others. And sometimes people get to persecute other people because they feel they've been wronged, even though in any other case, the district attorney would not press charges against that person, right? I believe that so basically a quarter of all of the district attorneys should be appointed by whoever is the elected AG at the time, right? And no one else, right? So you elect the AG based on their views, and every time there's a rotation of the AG through election, which is about every 4 years, right? Yeah. He has the ability to replace basically a quarter of whatever the district attorneys are. Or we find something where basically the defense bar, prosecutors, and judges basically get together and they decide, right? And, defense attorneys would make up a majority of it, right? They decide who's going to be their local district attorney. I think that it should be removed from the political influence of large families and people with shit tons of money, right? Yeah. So, for example, in my situation, and we're not going to talk about my case on YouTube, but what I will say is that in my case, if I did not have an extravagant amount of money compared to most people, right? My bond was $250,000 cash. Okay? $250,000 cash. My attorney was $80,000. Okay? $80,000.
Yeah.
Right? That right there is $330,000. That's close to $500,000. Not to mention that I lost that in wages. Like, I've spent that to keep myself up without having the job that I used to have. I've lost. So if we count it for my wages versus what I used to make, right? I've lost over $1 million.
Yeah.
Because going to making about making $30,000 to $50,000 versus $200,000, right? Across 5 years, $750,000 plus the $330,000 I already have, right? So that right there is $880,000. You're only $120,000 shy, and I'm going into that this year. You're only $120,000 shy of $1 million, and that means that's not including the assets that I've lost out on, the investments I've lost out on, having to exit my companies that I was invested in, having to lose the house that I had bought. My mom lost her house because I took care of that. We're not going to get into that, but like, if I didn't have the exceptional amount of cash I had, there would be no way I'd be free right now, let alone would be able to fight for myself. And I was getting done wrong. So
there's a lot of people in jail currently because they couldn't afford to live.
Well, we talked about this. So when I was in jail, I was in jail for about 30 days waiting for a bond hearing because apparently they decided not to assign me a lawyer for fucking 3 weeks. Um, yeah, waiting on trial for, they decided not to assign me a lawyer for 3 weeks. There were guys in there that I watched literally spend every day they possibly could get for what they were charged with because they couldn't afford bond. So they had like a $1,000 bond, which is like $150, but they didn't have $150 to spend. And so they just sat there and they served every possible day they could if they got found guilty. Okay. And then they're forced due to and other reasons, like in you can't just keep someone jailed for longer than they could possibly serve. You know, it's time served, period. They would get out, but the prosecutor wouldn't dismiss the charge. Like, the guy's already served the time. Why do you give a fuck? The only reason is because you want to keep them caught in the system, and because when you put them on probation after the fact, which you can do, they pay fees and fines. But these people can't afford $150 bond. Like, how are they going to pay your fees? You know they're not. You're gonna go and make them do 90-day dips or whatever, and then you're gonna terminate them unsuccessfully, put a judgment against them for whatever they owe, and now they're terminally in debt and can never own anything because it'll be taken from them. And so how are they supposed to get a car? How are they supposed to get a house? How are they supposed to improve their life? And you wonder why recidivism is so bad, right? And I'm a Republican technically. I'm actually a left-leaning libertarian, but at the end of the day, like, I'm not about being soft on crime. I'm about being fair and creating a situation where we're not just the justice system was never meant to just punish. It was meant to reform. And we're not allowing for that. And even when you get out and you've done your time, we still allow companies and other people to hold it against you, even once you've done it. Now, yes, if you're a sex offender, you shouldn't work with children. Okay, that's it. But we should look at what company and what sector they're in and what you're doing for that company when we return background results. We have the technical capabilities to do this. How do I know? I designed Bank of America's background check system. I architected it. I know our capabilities.
So,
this makes sense. Go ahead. Sorry.
I come across different news. We do got to keep topics rolling.
Uh-huh. But let me seal this up. So the thing is that I just want to take away the control of the system from it benefits only rich people. Not everybody has $330,000 in cash. Yeah. So beyond that, we'll move on. But the justice system sucks. Move forward. Go ahead. What's up?
Reading Germany would support Finland and Sweden decision to join NATO.
Oh yeah, that's the one I forgot. So Sweden finally admitted that they have U.S. security guarantees if they try to join NATO. And Finland and Sweden, if they try to join NATO, they're supported. Germany said they would support them. And what was the other one? I forget.
Sorry, Sweden and Finland.
Yeah, so Sweden and Finland, they would be supported by who? It was Germany and who else?
Well, I'm just reading. I'm just reading Germany here.
Yeah, so Germany would also support them, but the U.S. has given security guarantees to Sweden, and most likely Finland also can't confirm or deny, but it's been said privately that there are security assurances, but it's come out publicly, and Sweden says that it has security assurances from the U.S. And this goes back, hey, there we go, 43 of 45. I said that there's no way that we would continue to allow people thinking of joining NATO to continually be attacked, or else it would be the same as attacking NATO. Because if you attack anybody trying to join NATO, then you're basically attacking NATO because you're stopping people from joining the club, right? And you can't continue to let that happen and NATO stay a viable idea or treaty organization. So I expected this, I predicted it, and it turns out it's become true. And I hope that we stick by it. At some point, Russia has to learn that if you put your ass in the air and no, I'm going to be careful. I don't want to say that. If you continuously poke the bear may bite you. All right. And so, and at some point, maybe you need to get bit to learn your shit. Like, is what it is.
EU is also proposing total ban on Russian oil. New roundtable talks.
Hungary already said they're not going to participate in it. There's a bunch of countries that are talking about complying with the Russian basically scheme to bypass the restrictions. There's some needed kinks that need to be worked out. Currently, at its current price, I don't understand why we're not stepping up shale production, because Canada and US have ridiculous amount of shale, and we can produce our gas cheaper than we can get it right now anywhere else. Like, we were producing gas at a profit at $3 from shale, way back in the day, and now it only becomes unprofitable once it sinks like right around $2. Right, so there's no profit there to be made. But now we're sitting up at like between $4.15 to $5. So yeah, go ahead.
Germany is ready to support the ban.
Yeah, Hungary is not going to do it. Slovakia may have a problem. Not Slovakia. Romania may have a little bit of a problem, but most people should be able to do it. And the other thing is that the Netherlands have shale rock that has. There's some things that they supposedly say it may have caused an earthquake and stuff. So they have some things, but they have extra capacity too. And with the LN2 ships being moved and giant LN2 superstructures being put around the ports and stuff, I think it's entirely viable. And then Germany has 2 nuclear reactors it could turn back on. Like, we have the capability. So yeah, I hope they do. It definitely will neuter Russia. Russia needs the EU, and there's no way that India and China can fully offset the amount of oil that was being consumed by Europe. It's just not possible for them. And Russia will suffer greatly. I mean, 40% of the government's budget in Russia comes from oil production, guys. Oil and natural gas. So, yeah, man, I'm glad they're doing something. I'm glad they're standing up to Russia. It makes me very happy. So, I try something a little different. I'm gonna move myself over this way and transition. So, blame the environmentalists not wanting to allow politicians to make money off politicians who make money off of foreign oil and gas deals. Yeah. I think at some point that's going to change, but if American politics continues the way it is, it's divisive right now. But a lot of people are really mad at a certain group right now. And I mean, there's people on TikTok who are like, I thought I would never say this. So, and I don't think that the Roe v. Wade thing is going to be big enough to change that direction, right? Like, I think that they're in for a ride.
We have an election coming up here in Canada as well, and we're going to be flipping parties as well. The polls are suggesting that we're going to be progressive, conservative.
Yeah, and I hope that we move more centrist, because here's the thing, right? So there's this window. We can talk about this later. We're not going to dive into the deep dive, but I think what's going to happen is we're going to end up with a more centrist right government, and the left is going to get its hand slapped, and it needs to, because it's just moved the spectrum has just moved so far out, right, to extremist, and it's bad. And you guys can say, oh, the right has an extreme too. Well, guess what? The very far right extreme is not super embraced by large groups. The far extreme left in America we got some problems. Okay.
Has there ever been a left-leaning president that wasn't far left? That was more
Obama, when he first started, like Obama, when he initially took office, was even against gay marriage, dude. It was crazy. FDR is also one. Oh, yep. There goes Tarkin. FDR also. And JFK.
Believe it or not, like, I mean, when Obama first came around and he was doing his speeches, I was glued to the screen. That guy can talk and sell. He could sell an ice cube to an Eskimo.
No, absolutely. I think he's a great orator. He's proof that being able to speak to people and their needs, right, is very empowering.
Our current prime minister, after serving one term, was very much disliked. But when he came around for his second term, making his speeches for his campaign trail, that speech seemed very it seemed written in a very familiar way, and I would not be surprised if he went to see Obama and said, "Hey, can you write me up a speech?"
So
Because
here's the thing I say to a lot of people, right? So a lot of people who don't like Obama and they're like, "Oh, he was so left and he was so extreme." And I'm like, "So name some things for me that Obama did that were extreme."
Obamacare,
Okay, so uh
just that one thing. That's it.
okay. Well, name. That's why I said name some things for me that Obama did that were extreme. Okay, nationalized healthcare that's subsidized by the government so people can afford it. I mean, that's pretty much every other country does that, and I think that people should. I don't understand why dental is separate from normal insurance, but whatever. We'll leave that be. But okay. So the ACA, right? The Affordable Care Act, right? Um, I don't think that that was that extreme. I mean, it still maintained privatization. It was basic subsidization. It didn't take on all the cost. It let private companies help do it. I think that a lot of holes were put in it, boy, when it got watered down, but it still was a bipartisan attempt at it. Um,
It was an
but
attempt, but there was no.
I mean, the
It
highest
didn't
level
make
of deportations, the largest amount of border enforcement,
yeah.
the largest support of free speech. I mean, he literally came out and said, you cannot respond to people saying
No.
things you don't like with violence. Like he was very clear on that. Now that's changed now that he's not president, and
So
he needs to quell the left. But go ahead, sorry.
he was a left wing centralist, right?
Yeah,
Right.
he's a left
So
wing
now, what about a
centrist.
right wing? What about a right wing centralist?
So as of now, Obama in his initial platform that he ran on for his first election would now be considered a right wing centrist
I became slightly left wing.
because the window shifted because the left keeps moving so far left that the window for the center keeps moving that way. So now that I used to be considered a left centrist, right? And I other than the Second Amendment, I pretty much agreed with Obama's platform, right?
Yeah.
Now I'm considered on the right. Right, not right centrist. I'm considered on the right because of my stand on the Second Amendment and
Yeah.
my stand on abortion, my personal stand on abortion. Right.
Yeah.
So, it's quite interesting. So,
Okay. Yeah.
we'll see. We'll see. I think that Justin Trudeau hung himself with how he responded. I think there were better ways for him to respond to the truckers convoy and stuff like that, and I think that he basically sealed his fate by the way he responded to it. I think if he would have just talked to them, he could have had a much better outcome.
To me, it wasn't just that. He's been caught so many times, lining the pockets of his, if sometimes family, sometimes
Do we
other
have proof of that?
politicians.
Do we have direct proof of that? Like very
Yeah. It's
okay.
it's right in the news.
Okay.
The SNC Lavalin, look that up. Look up the God, what's the name of it?
So
There
there's
was
strong proof that he has allegedly enriched his family. Yeah.
yeah. His mother was like set up as she was the CEO of some sort of company. And anyway, like I forget the name of it. Off the cuff, I forget the name.
All good. No, absolutely.
Anyways, and he was brought to the oh,
Well, don't you think it's kind of funny? Let me switch gears here. Don't you think it's kind of funny that the only people to enact the Emergency War Powers Act, and yes, guys, I know that they renamed it the Emergency Powers Act, but it's still the same legislation basically with a few minor tweaks. Him and his father, the only people who've ever enacted that in order to quell the public. Their public, it's not what it was meant for.
We now have both the Emergency Wars Act and the Emergency Measures Act.
Mm-hmm.
So both of them do still exist.
Oh, I thought they got rid of the Emergency War Powers Act, yeah, or they just took part of that and made it into the one he basically invoked. But yeah,
because
it's crazy. Go ahead.
The thing is that if you enact the Emergency Wars Act it wouldn't have been police that would have showed up in Ottawa. It would have been the armed forces. And the last time the armed forces were called up was against the natives that were making a stance in Oka or
In
something.
the Northern Territories, right?
Sure. I forget the details. I was quite young, and
No, understood.
I draw blanks. I'm a carpenter by trade, and I often call the thing that you put on the thing. And people are,
I get it, but I think that the natives are more in the Northern Territories, right?
yes, but also in Southern Ontario.
Okay.
I think this was in Southern Ontario. Anyways,
Okay.
his father enacted the Wars Act
Got it.
to stop them from barricading. They were barricading roads and railway lines, and it became a fight.
Damn.
And there were people hurt, and now they had to answer to it, and the government was wrong. He shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
So to not relive that, they created the Emergencies Act.
Mhm.
The Emergency Act, where you could call police force now, right, to come and serve.
See, to
Anyway,
me, that's insanity. That's insanity to me. Like the ability to suspend due process, and if you tried to do that in America, you would run into some serious problems.
We have a serious problem here in Canada because the whole population of Canada, right, is I think we're at and I think it's 47 million people, somewhere around it. 33% of the whole Canadian population lives in Southern Ontario area. If you win that territory in your political race, right? If you could convince those people, you have a minority government.
Yep.
That's all you need. You have a
And
minority
you create
government.
coalition, right? You guys have coalition government, basically.
Pretty much.
Yeah. So it's like the UK. Yeah.
So, and it's been a liberal area for so long. But I don't know. We've got a really good contender in the Progressive Conservative Party right now. I really hope he can make some changes in Southern Ontario.
Well,
move a lot of those red territories to blue.
And that's the other thing. When the left becomes the norm, then to keep establishing a left, you have to move further left, and then and because that becomes the norm, anything on the right becomes extreme, right? So, because if that's all you've known is leftist ideology, and for you that's the center, that's the norm, right? Then anything that's actually right will just be, So, yeah, I'm hopeful. I think we need, but more so than anything, I've said this before, and maybe we'll leave off on this. I think we need term limits for Congress and the Senate. I don't think there should be anything such as a lifelong politician, right? I don't think that should be a career for people.
What about a party? What about a part? You know how you guys have Democratic?
Yeah, we have a two-party system.
Is there anything else?
Yeah, well, you can be independent, but it's very rare you'll win. Like Bernie Sanders is an example of a rare person who was quote unquote independent, but he started caucusing with the Democrats to.
What if you said that? I think you had talked about
Tarkin. Hold on, let me address something. Tarkin. Unfortunately, that would be ageism, right? And age is a protected class for discrimination, according to the Supreme Court, for good reason, by the way. Go ahead. Sorry.
We had talked about how many terms of how many years can a president run, right? But what about a party? it can't be democratic for more than. Should that be a thing?
No, I think the people should decide who they want to put into office. I also don't believe in a two-party system. I also believe we should remove money from the equation. We should have we should have a flat tax no matter what, and you're immune if you're below a certain threshold of income, right?
Yeah.
So basically it falls to the higher earners. And that flat tax basically pays, if you're going to run for any federal office, you basically get this X amount to run your campaign, and that's it. And it'll
But
be based off of like where you're running for office, the average cost of living, average cost of advertisement, right? And basically that'll be your cut. Go ahead, sorry.
What do you need to qualify to run for office?
There's no qualifications to run for office as far as like there's disqualifiers, but the only places that you need qualifications to run for office, and sometimes this varies by state, but in federal elections, for judges you have to have a law degree. Okay, you have to be bar certified.
What I'm saying, like you want to run for office, so you're saying anybody could run, anybody could apply for this money and run for office. So every Tom, Dick, and Harry would just run over there and.
Well, you'd have to. Well, no, you'd have to win your primaries, right, or your caucus, right? So
Can that be funded?
That's a great question. I think that those races are so much like you can do fundraising for that. I would think, but it can't be corporate. We have this bad law that was put into place by the Supreme Court called Citizens United that said that corporations are somehow human beings and therefore have a right to political speech. And that's how you got current super PACs and stuff that basically, so a super PAC, the idea was, oh well, they're just making political contributions, and they're that's how super PACs happen. But if I walk into a senator's office, right, and I have a huge war chest of just tons of money in my super PAC, I'm like, hey, you see this law right here? We'd really like you to pass it. And well, if you don't, we're gonna have to primary you, right? And put, we're gonna have to back someone against you in the primaries and put, a few $1 million behind them, and good luck. Or you could just vote yes on this one law, and they'll do that. And that means that some people have more say in what gets passed than other people, which is not how our democracy was ever intended to work. Okay.
Yeah.
But why is Congress going to make a law that's not in its own best interest, right? They're people, right? And so the way you do that is you put in term limits. Guess what? I only have another term I can serve, and I get retirement. I don't give a fuck. You can take that money and put it where the sun don't shine, right? We have a minimum age for president, which is 35. I was going to get to that. I was taking my time talking. Also, you can be disqualified from serving by having certain convictions, right? So if you've been convicted for like election fraud, you clearly can't be on the board of elections. You can't be stuff like that. But like if you're convicted of certain felonies, you can't. I think if you're convicted of any felony, you can't run for federal office. I don't remember. I know you can run for local offices if you've been convicted of felony. I'm not sure about federal office, but
No.
Luna, I've always asked that question, but they say that there's a certain level of maturity required to have the presidency, right? Ageism applies when you're being biased against people because of how old they are, not how young, right? And so it's considered youth. I think there's some law around it. I'm very unclear. I'd have to look it up. It's been a while since I've looked into it, but I think there was some legal doctrine that supported that you could set an age limit for how young someone could be, but you can't be biased against someone because they're too old. I have to look it up again. I could be absolutely wrong. Again, guys, not a lawyer. I know law from things I've researched and from my friends who are lawyers, and I was going to law school. I did not get through law school, let alone to get my anything. So take it with a grain of salt.
originally I would have said, like, I mean, if you're too old,
Yeah.
you're just not going to win the debates,
Yeah.
because like
Well, here's the
fumble
thing.
through it. But then again, look at your latest president.
That's why I was about to get to, guys. Like, I don't care what side you're on. If you think that there's not something going on with Biden, I mean, you can't chalk all of that up to a stutter, guys. You can't. Like, it's just so weird. I think that
Fumbles a lot.
he creates entire words and doesn't just mumble a lot. Like, he just jumbles an entire sentence of like, what the fuck did you just say?
Yeah.
Like, it's quite intense. That's what I'll say. Throws me off. But yeah, man. All right. Well, guys, we're running into almost 12:30 and it's getting late. I appreciate you guys for coming. It's been great. Thank you for joining us. Remember, guys, no matter what, you have intrinsic value just by being alive. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. I wish all of you the best. Have a great night. Make sure you like and subscribe the video. We're going to be back tomorrow with another show. We're going to start on time this time, hopefully. 7 o'clock Eastern to 9 Eastern. I appreciate all of you. I'm still working on getting my friend on. I'll have an announcement for that hopefully tomorrow of what day that we'll be able to have Matt Barton on. He's a lawyer, and we'll have a legal discussion around the Roe v. Wade piece. We'll make it to it eventually at some point. You guys have a great night. Love all of y'all, and we'll see you later. All right.
Peace out.
Peace out.